right, looks like we are recording. My name is James Pepper. I'm the chair of the Cannabis Control Board. Today is Wednesday, November 19th, 2025. It's 1:05 p.m. and I call this meeting to order. Just a few opening remarks before we get started. There's some surprise hemp news at the federal level this week that is frankly sending shockwaves across the country. There's a lot that we don't know about this policy shift, when it's going to roll out, how it's going to roll out, who's going to enforce it. And I imagine that there will be changes in the coming months, given some of the bipartisan responses we've seen to it. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it today. I admittedly have never loved the kind of dual standard that applied to the hemp processors that were clearly making intoxicating THC products. But we have some great hemp processors in this state that are focused on CBD dominant and full spectrum products that unfortunately are being swept up in this new policy. So we're going to keep, in discussion with those folks and our legislature about how we can accommodate those businesses. Medical use endorsement, we have a full class for our first enhanced bud tender training, which is really incredible. I apologize for all the delays, but hopefully we will have at least 20 plus new retail options for medical patients open for business in early December, just a few weeks away. We have tentatively scheduled the next training for the last week in January. This one will be open to anyone working in the industry, but we will again try to prioritize those employees working at retailers with a medical use endorsement. And we will publicize this training more broadly once it's been set. Equivalency guidance. So we've been receiving a fair amount of feedback about the equivalency guidance that we posted recently. And I wanted to just take a few minutes to address some of the points that have been raised. And just as a starting point, the fact that there is a transaction limit for cannabis and cannabis products is one of the many caps that were included in the original tax and regulate bill as part of the compromise to get that bill over the finish line. So whether anyone on the board agrees with the policy or not, we need to have one of these transaction limits by law, and it needs to be rationally related to the very straightforward 1 ounce of cannabis flower that's part of that. That amount, the 1 ounce, is the amount that the legislature believed is a reasonable personal use amount and would not lead to large purchases that are destined for resale outside of the adult use system. Our original equivalency guide had no real rational relationship to those personal use amounts. I think it was 1,600 seltzers and 1,600 5 milligram edibles that would have been allowed. So this new guidance is our attempt at honoring the intent of the legislature. It's quite clear that the industry feels differently. We've received some really good feedback already about specifically tinctures and beverages. But it's really important for you to let us know what you think is the appropriate personal use amount for products that is at least in the ballpark of the 1 ounce of flower equivalent. And again, that's different for medical patients. Those numbers are doubled for medical patients. And if you think transaction limits are unfair to either consumers or medical patients or rural Vermonters that don't live near a retailer, you really should tell your legislature that. There was a point that we made this change without industry input. I just want to note that we intentionally delayed the implementation of this policy specifically to receive input and give us time to make adjustments based upon the input that we receive. We have this meeting today. We have a peer networking event tomorrow at 1 p.m. specifically for this topic. And then, of course, we receive public comments directly into our inboxes through our website the public input form, ccb.vermont.gov/form/public input form. You know, knowing how my two colleagues here operate, I think we very much are willing to listen to well-reasoned input and make adjustments accordingly. And then I also wanted to just quickly address the notion that this may impose new criminal penalties on customers. Guidance documents do not have the force of law. They don't change anything about the criminal cannabis possession laws. The possession thresholds and associated civil and criminal penalties are defined quite clearly in Title 18. And this transaction limit guidance has no bearing on any of that. And then I know there's a lot of interest in commenting on this guidance today. I do want to note that the board has to act on a request for a retail location change from Albert to Burlington immediately following this public comment period. So if you are a business owner or you're an interested stakeholder on that decision, either positively or negatively, I would encourage you to use at least a portion of your public comment to share your thoughts with the board on that relocation request or any of the other kind of important issues that are on the agenda, including product displays and NECAN, medical product branding. And, you know, we will have one more public comment period, but I don't want those issues to get lost in this equivalency document, which, you know, we do have a public meeting dedicated to tomorrow.
And a board meeting in December that we would.
And a board meeting in December, yep. But other than that, we just need to approve the minutes from our last regular meeting, which is on October 29th, 2025.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so public comment. We have two members of the public in the room, so we'll start with them. Then we'll move to the folks that join by phone. If you'd like to comment, please raise your virtual hand. And then we'll end with people that join via phone. And so, yeah, please.
You got it.
There you go.
Yeah, they just like any more.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Bellavance. I am a member of the Cannabis Retailers Association of Vermont, as well as the Vermont Growers Association. I am the founder of Sunset Lake Cannabis, located in South Hero, Vermont. The reason I came here today is I would like to express my concern with the purchase limit guidance and the numbers that are expressed in this guidance. I believe that these limits will impose an undue burden on Vermonters who are trying to purchase safe and legal cannabis from our licensees, specifically rural Vermonters who tend to visit dispensaries less frequently and make larger purchases because of the greater distances they have to travel. I also think that this guidance, if enacted as it stands, would result in a decrease in cannabis excise and sales tax revenue for the state, causing the elimination of good paying cannabis jobs and increased administrative costs for the Cannabis Control Board as it attempts to enforce this guidance across all 110 licensed retailers. Lastly, I am concerned that this guidance, if enacted, will divert demand for cannabis products into the illicit market, as well as neighboring states, which do have higher limits for purchase, specifically New York, which is currently at a 3-ounce limit. And recently, the Massachusetts Senate has voted to increase their purchase limit to 2 ounces from a 1-ounce limit. So while I am in opposition to this guidance, I also want to provide constructive feedback for the board. And I would ask that you suspend the existing numbers and replace them with a clear and justifiable rationale of 8,400 milligrams per category based off of equivalencies to the 28-gram 1-ounce limit. I also ask that the board conduct a series of public stakeholder meetings prior to the legislative session. So stakeholders such as the Cannabis Retailers Association, the Vermont Growers Association, medical patients, consumers, medical professionals can weigh in prior to the legislative session, and that during the legislative session, we explore raising the current possession limit from 1 ounce to 2 ounce, as our neighbors in Massachusetts are doing. So hopefully this testimony is helpful. And while I am in opposition to this current guidance, I am willing to work constructively with the members of the board to reform this and work towards a better solution for the people in the state of Vermont. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hello, I'm Michelle Chapman from Highly Rooted, and I also run the Vermont Cannabis Care Network, and we help cancer patients in Vermont. Because of the Vermont Cannabis Care Network, I often speak with medical patients, specifically with cancer, but sometimes MS, epilepsy, etc. And I speak with them and hear their burdens all of the time with accessing cannabis for their medical conditions. And this new purchase limit would severely impact them. A lot of them live in rural Vermont, and trying to get to an hour and a half away to go and be able to pick up their medicine from the closest dispensary is going to be a huge inconvenience for them. And at the end of the day is going to make it so that they don't have access to it. I think we should be increasing those limits to 8,400 for recreational and 16,800 for medical. I think 16,800 milligrams could get most patients through about 2 months, which in my opinion is a appropriate amount of time to not have to go and get medicine again. At the end of the day, these people are sick. They didn't choose to be sick. They're forced to be sick. And having access to their medicine is very important to be able to get it conveniently. Thank you.
Did you have?
I'm going to send you guys those, and because I want to give everyone else time to speak. It's 4 minutes long.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
to be respectful, I'll do
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Thank you both. Next is Elizabeth.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I am the owner of Rolling J's and Stir the Pot Cannabis Kitchen, and I'm also a member of CRAV. And I want to comment on the new purchase limits, and I'm going to start by giving you a compliment, which is that in general, I've always seen you take a very consultative approach to making policy, and I've always really respected and appreciated that. But from what I'm hearing from retailers, that didn't really happen this time, which is disappointing, and I hope it's an anomaly and not going to be a new MO. And one of the reasons why this is concerning, I know a lot of people are going to speak about the actual limits themselves, but just from a sheer implementation standpoint, realistically, to prevent mistakes at the register, this is going to take some software changes. And a lot of people are using out-of-the-box software. They're working with vendors. It's not going to be possible to make those kinds of software changes in anywhere near 2 months. People are going to need more time to make this happen, right? And so before you make this change, I would ask that you consult with retailers to find out what is realistic, what they're going to need to do to make it happen on the ground. And then also, I would like you to listen to them about the limits themselves, but also please take into account just the sheer nuts and bolts reality of implementation. Thank you.
Thank you. Eli?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My public comment is just in regards to display policy at events. Obviously, I am an interested party in relation to the Vermont Cannabis Convention, where I know in the past things have been different and have evolved. What I'm hoping for is some sort of solution that allows for licensed cannabis companies to possess their own products and display them in age-controlled environments like private events. Understanding there was concern about licensees diverting products after the fact, after purchase. I'm sure that there is a way through the tracking process. Maybe it's having things be weighed before and after the events. But I'm confident that there's a solution, and I think it's a common sense issue that could be resolved quickly. And I hope it's something that the board can look at. I know it's on the docket for today, so I'll wait to participate in that discussion. And thank you for looking at it.
Eli, I hate to do this, but can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Is the venue okay with samples specifically at NECAN?
our conversations with the venue in the past have revolved around what's legal in the state of Vermont.
Okay.
Thank you.
And so that is the framework which we use. That's the framework which dictates events. When I talk to other venues as well, I know it's a big concern for folks in the wedding industry. That's something that's come up in the past before. So the default is always what are the statutes regarding individuals in the state of Vermont. You know, how the board chooses to interact with licensees afterwards is something that's hard for us to interpret and impossible for us to enforce sometimes.
Okay.
You know, so we're hoping for some clarity there. Thank you.
Okay. Bob, Drink Tonic.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the board for the time to speak today. My name is Josh Baer, co-owner of Drink Tonic, a licensed Tier 2 cannabis beverage manufacturer in Heinsberg, Vermont. I'm commenting today regarding the newly released purchase limit guidance, which lowers the allowed THC in beverages to 120 milligrams per transaction, while solid edibles remain at 1,000 milligrams. That's an 8 times difference, despite both products being orally ingested and ultimately metabolized through the same pathway. There's no scientific basis for treating beverages as more potent per milligram, yet this new guidance restricts beverages far more severely than any neighboring legal state, none of which single out beverages with separate reduced limits. This also fits a pattern that many manufacturers have observed, that THC beverages consistently receive more restrictive treatment in rules and guidance. Under this new limit, consumers can no longer purchase something as simple as a case of 24 drinks, while still being allowed to purchase significantly more THC in edible form. I'm respectfully asking the board to explain the rationale for this disproportionate restriction and to please reconsider the beverage limit before January. Thank you.
Thank you. Isabella.
Hello. My name is Isabella Navin. I am a 24-year-old medical marijuana card holder. Last June, I was diagnosed with a softball-sized astrocytoma in my brain, and I had to get 2 separate emergency craniotomies. And every single day, I am so thankful for the opportunity that I feel the Fico chocolates give me to fight the thing that almost took my life and could at any point, really. Unfortunately, I have been made aware of the updated guidance that would make access to my medicine almost impossible, as my car has recently become not drivable, and my husband works the night shift. So making a 4-hour round trip to the nearest medical dispensary is just not manageable for me. I know it can be difficult to step into other people's shoes, and to be fair, we're cancer patients, so I can definitely understand why you would not want to. But I am here today to ask, please don't make it harder to access our medicine. Gas is expensive. Cars are expensive. I cannot afford to be driving 94 miles round trip to pick up my medicine, even if I did have a working car. Yeah, our health is largely in your hands. So just please show us that the state of Vermont cares about the well-being of its residents. And yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks for the comment, Isabella. Derek Bushy. Derek, you there? Derek G. Bushy. All right, I'm gonna come back to you. Tito.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Tito Byrne, member of CRAV, and agree with what I've been hearing so far. And I'm here to just say how disappointed this all is. This feels just like a huge distraction from all these things that we really need to be focusing on, like opt-in, opt-out, or the tremendous disaster that's been, the potency caps that just continue to wreak havoc on us, consumption, lounges, the advertising restrictions. These are all the things we need to be focusing on. So this feels like a huge distraction, and just it's just more friction. it feels like things need to be getting easier, not harder. And this certainly is not helping that. It's no secret we're losing to the black market. We're losing to the other states. This is just making it worse. Also, it's confusing and unnecessary, making them tedious for no reason. Hearing what you had said, Chair Pepper, about these products not being destined for resale, as if somebody's going to walk into a dispensary, purchase products, and then go resell them somewhere else. That's just not happening. How could it happen? The products are so expensive, and then you add the tax on there, it just doesn't even actually make economic sense for somebody to do that. So it feels like we're adding a lot of friction for no reason. The point that Sam was making about rural customers is really important. I want to add to that because we're all trying to build these really incredible businesses and make them destinations. Every business wants to be a destination business. This basically makes it impossible. Who would, as these other people are saying, who's going to drive all these hours just to be able to buy so little and not be able to come back again? So it's just incredibly stifling. As far as Alburgh to Burlington, I mean, Burlington needs another store like it needs a hole in the head. So that it seems like we really need to be going the opposite direction there, where the Burlington stores and other towns of high density can spread out. Lastly, please rescind this guidance and furthermore recommend to the legislature that we raise all the limits because quite frankly, they're all too low and don't make sense and are adding this terrible friction to our already very difficult lives. So thank you.
Thanks, Tito. Bobby?
Hey, thanks for the opportunity. Bobby Berg, Hot and Heady, also Vermont Growers Association. I'd like to echo all of these other comments regarding the reinterpretation of purchase limits. I understand your hands are largely tied on the flower and concentrate fronts, but it'd be great to see you advocate to increase those limits in the State House this year. Beyond that, some of these other point combos, just like there's no logic here, I think is my biggest issue. Like how is the lack of equivalency is mind-boggling as someone who looks for patterns. Beyond that, if I was still in the traditional market, I'd be looking at this ruling and laughing my way to the bank. So again, supporting all these other comments in regards to affirming these issues. Thank you for your time. Have a good one.
Thanks, Bobby. Sean?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Sean LaRock, cannabis advocate, market advocate from most of the sectors in the last couple of years. Thank you to any patients that come forward and tell their story in these public comments. It's hard for me to tell my father's story as a patient and my story as a caregiver over and over. So please, patients, continue speaking up. Thank you, Michelle and Troy. Thank you for helping patients do that work. I echo Tito's comments. Realistically, the dollars and cents of this math, customers are not buying product and then reselling it. Those secondary customers, the prices would be egregious. None of this makes sense. I would like to voice my opposition to the guideline changes and say that most of these issues continue to live in a bubble. Somebody had mentioned, well, right now a customer can purchase 1,600 beverages. Well, that's with our current cap of 5 milligrams apiece. We continuously hear from the market, the customers, the retailers, the manufacturers, we'd like to increase serving size. So if a drink was perhaps 20 milligrams, well, now we can only buy 400 of them, not the 1,600. And realistically, is a retailer going to sell 400 of an item to a singular customer and carry a pallet out to their car? I think not. And I know that your guys' hands are tied in terms of making actual potency changes right now and some of those things. And you advocate for us to talk directly to our legislators, that you folks are only an advisory board and you are advising us how to help best make changes. But I would like to put it to you that you are also an advisor. You are all advisors to the legislators. You have the closest tug on their ear in mass. Me as one individual, I can hit one legislator. You guys attend meetings with groups of legislators and can heavily relay all of these public comments to start swaying actual legislative changes. Other things, serving sizes, lounges. We are absolutely struggling for a place for cannabis consumers publicly. Please support on social consumption lounges. Thank you everybody for your time.
Sorry, there's a little feedback. I did hear lounges. We need a place to consume. I think that was the end of the comment. Derek Bushybeard.
Can you hear me this time?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. I was having some difficulty. My name's Derek Grant. I am owner, founder of Bushy Beard Cultivation and owner of Bushy Beard Dispensary. And as someone who, I just kind of wanted to come in and echo what everyone else seems to be saying. I operate in a rural area. Our dispensary's in a rural area. A lot of our customers are traveling, an hour, 45 minutes, 2 hours sometimes. So they tend to make larger purchases. So these new guidelines are definitely going to restrict, their access. It's going to increase their costs. They're going to have to come more, but that's not what's going to happen. They're just going to go to the illicit market. This is, in my opinion, just something that's going to further fuel the illicit market. It's also, I feel kind of detrimental to everyone in the industry. There's a lot of us here. There's a lot of us trying to sell product. And if all of a sudden it's going to be restricted even more, I think it's going to become tighter and tougher for a lot of us, which is just not something I think is a good thing. So I just really wanted to put my 2 cents in about all these new caps and whatnot. I think we've operated for 3 years and it seems to be working well. I get you guys feel you have an obligation to bring stuff more online. I can respect that. I just think these just seem to be extremely low, and especially on the drink side. In our area, we tend to have people stock up on drinks when they're biking or whatever. So this is going to affect that aspect of business as well. So thank you so much. It's just all I kind of wanted to say.
Yeah, thanks for the comment, Derek. Cynthia? Cynthia? Are you there? Okay, I'll come back to you.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I was trying
All
to
right, no
figure out
problem.
how to unmute. So yeah, I own a dispensary in Montpelier, Juana's Garden. I just wanted to, voice my opinion. I understand, and I mean, we support the CCB's, mission to promote safe consumption, but these THC purchase limits are just so confusing. They're gonna make it harder for us to survive. This system is just so difficult to comprehend, and let alone to explain to a customer while they're shopping. They're going to reduce all the average sales cards, which actually we need to, in order to survive, we need to actually boost the sales. And, this is not protecting the industry. You're not protecting the small businesses and our ability to be profitable. And without the dispensaries, there is no truly local regulated industry. So, I don't think this is the right way to go. So just wanted to put that out there and echo everybody that is, unhappy with this decision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephanie?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Waterman. I'm the owner of the Hidden Grove Dispensary in White River Junction, and I also have a Tier 1 cultivation license. I am here today to express my concerns on the purchase limits. The new point system seems arbitrary and unnecessary. It is more confusing than the current guidance. I am disappointed in the lack of discussion prior to this guidance being issued. I'm glad that you started today's meeting expressing your interest to have these conversations. I think it's really important that we continue to have that as stakeholders. The total milligram allowance that we have now is much simpler. All point of sale systems that serve the cannabis space operate on a milligrams per concentration, and they count your sales as you're selling to the customer so that you can't oversell someone. They don't work on this arbitrary point system, which would, like another commenter mentioned, cause some additional work for our IT people. So it would be much simpler if we could just settle on a total milligram allowance, and that's what you're allowed to buy across all categories, mix and match, which is what most consumers want to do. And I really would love to remind the board, you know, I think it's important that you guys work to make our lives easier, not harder, both for businesses and consumers. And this really seems to limit access and causes a lot of other pain points. And I look forward to continuing the conversation with you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. Jordan?
How you doing? Jordan Keggy, owner of Diggity Organics, cultivation and retail store in Manchester, Vermont. First of all, I'm not going to be overly redundant with this, but I think this is a horrible idea. That being said, we have one of the best markets, and thank you for creating it that way. And we've had no issues so far besides some outlier cases. When we start to add layers of enforcement and mechanisms like this, it kind of is underscoring a bigger movement. And it seems like the political momentum is going against us when we're talking about like making a market that's more accessible to people, to customers, easier for retailers and cultivators. And it really seems like we're going the opposite direction with this. And I think that's all I've got to say. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Jordan. Andy?
Thank you. Sorry about that moment to get off the mic. Thank you, Chair Pepper and the board for the opportunity to speak. Andy Goldman from Down to the Roots and Gardens Gold. We'd like to comment on the new purchase limits guidance. First, we agree with what everyone else has said so far. We also operate in a rural area. This will absolutely hurt us, and so importantly, further push people into the thriving illicit market in Vermont, which is a safety issue for Vermonters that we know the board cares about, but that's not demonstrated in these arbitrary new guidance. I would call them rules, and I'd like to speak to that. While technically this guidance is guidance and not rules, and therefore not subject to the agency rulemaking laws of Vermont, we contend that these changes are so fast and so far beyond what the legislature has made into law that we believe it's actually inappropriately depending upon technical rules to change policy. And that's not what the Vermont agency law actually allows for guidance. Vermont is also about transparency. These were done in the dark. We ask that you please continue as you have in the past, work with those that are impacted by this, but also know the customers. And for safety reasons, please work with us. Third, like to point out an error in the guidance. The guidance's quotation of the possession laws, 18 VSA 423A1, is actually incorrect when it, in regards to clones. I have the statute right in front of us, right in front of me, and you can have an ounce of flower and you can then separately have clones or mature plants. What the guidance says is or, and that's not correct. And the guidance therefore also awards points out of the 100 for immature live plants. And that's also not what the law says. So if you could please look at that and fix that, that would be great. In addition, the law states 1 ounce of flower or its equivalent, but nowhere does the law state personal use. And instead, the CCB has used seemingly arbitrary and unscientific judgments of the equivalency of 1 milligram of THC for different categories with zero rationale proposed. So we've gone and translated the points in the guidance chart into allowable milligrams, and the results are shocking. I mean, you have vape carts and concentrate are all 300% of a milligram of flour. Tinctures are 7 times as much, edibles 8.5 times as much, and beverages 70 times as much for 1 milligram. How is that equivalent? Please let us know how these came up with. Please be transparent. We really want to work with the board to fix this. And in the meantime, we ask that the guidance be rescinded until more rational rules are proposed and adopted through formal rulemaking processes for Vermont agencies. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Andy. Meredith?
Hi, thank you. I'm Meredith from Magic Man and Crav, and I just wanted to state my support for Sam's statements, Tito's statements, Andrea's statements. This purchase limit guideline is horrible for the market. For every reason everybody's mentioned, plus market compression is already unbearable for everybody. And on that note, I wanted to just support Tito on not bringing any more dispensaries into Burlington or Chittenden County for that matter. I cannot see how that can help any of this. So thank you for listening to us all, and I hope that you reconsider these guidelines. Thank you.
Thanks, Meredith. Robert?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, I'm Robert. I'm one of the owners at Garcia's in downtown Burlington. First and foremost, I definitely agree with everything that's been said about the purchase limits and the potency caps. And I have more comments that I'll save for tomorrow for that. But just to touch on the other thing about the other store in Burlington, I do think it's important to reference the meeting that we had a little while back where they talked about like population density and the amount of stores. And that, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, Burlington wasn't actually that oversaturated with dispensaries. There's definitely too many right downtown, but the actual Burlington area, it doesn't seem like the data supported that there's actually too many dispensaries here. And I think that it's also, important to remember that a lot of the growers in the state are actually having trouble selling product too, and that we do want more successful retailers. And there's some, perhaps there's some in Burlington that aren't doing very well that may not be around forever, and that a place that could potentially do, serve the people better or help the industry as a whole better, might actually benefit the industry and not actually hurt anyone. But I just think, once again, I understand people's concerns about oversaturation, but I do think that we should have a fair access and give everyone an opportunity to participate. And that's all I got to say about that. But tomorrow for the potency Fs or the possession purchase limits, there's a bunch of other data that people kind of touched on right here that we can go over tomorrow when there's the meeting's more about that. But that's all I got for today.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
Scott?
Hello, I'm Scott Sparks. I own Vermont Bud Barn in Brattleboro, Vermont. I also have a Tier 1 cultivation. I want to offer my support to what Sam and Michelle said, as well as many others on this meeting. As a business owner on the border of Massachusetts and not that far from New York, this will absolutely impact us because currently their regulations allow them to sell essentially twice what we can sell, and not to mention the black market. So I just want to say I hope you can reconsider this and we can come up with a compromise that works for everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Dave?
Thank you. I want to thank all my industry colleagues for their comments, with which I agree completely. I want to hit on several points. Some have been addressed, some have not. I'll just run through them. But I want to start with, we want you to start talking with us, not at us. You released this policy, this guidance, without any industry input on a Friday afternoon with no notice. You didn't schedule the meeting until about a week, 2 weeks later, once you started receiving some pushback. We have a hard time trusting that this was intended as a starting point for discussion because of the way it was adopted. We have a hard time trusting that this is a legitimate good faith starting point because of the way it was put out with no notice, with no input. We feel that you do not respect the people running this industry. We have real world expertise. We interact with the customers every day. We know better than anyone else what it takes to run a business in this industry, what the customers want. Talk to us first, not last. Many aspects of this guidance are arbitrary and irrational. Edibles, beverages, and tinctures are all consumed the same way, but they're not treated remotely the same way in the guidance. Even though some edibles are drink mixes and some tinctures are water soluble for making beverages and marketed specifically for making beverages, there is no rational basis for treating beverages as an ounce at 120 milligrams, but a solid mix that can be made into a beverage as an ounce at 1,000 milligrams, and a liquid tincture that is used for making beverages at 1,200 milligrams, all being the same thing. The guidance is confusing. It talks to units and product types, but ignores that many products within product types have different potencies within their packages. You talk about how many packages of 100 milligram edibles. You don't say how many packages of 50 milligram edibles or 25 milligram edibles. You talk about one tincture bottle at 1,200 milligrams, but you don't talk about how many 300 milligram, 150 milligram. It's confusing. It's harder to implement than a milligram-based limit. As Elizabeth correctly pointed out, our point of sale systems automatically calculate towards the purchase limit based on flower equivalencies. These arbitrary points that you want us to assign are an extra and unnecessary step. It will cause failure. It will cause customer frustration. It will cause a longer sale time. It will cause bud tenders to be confused. A laminated card is not the solution. A program is the solution. We have those programs. This guidance is completely unnecessary. We've had a limit in place. The 8,400 milligram limit has been in place since the market opened. We hear concern about so-called smurfing and diversion. This is not a real world problem. Tito is exactly right. Prices in this market are already much higher than black market prices. No one is coming to our stores and buying pounds for resale. It doesn't make economic sense. They will lose money. This guidance hurts businesses when we're already struggling. The industry wants, above anything else, a return to market stability. After a year where sales per store have plummeted by about 25% due to mismanagement of the market, this policy piles more instability on top of existing instability. We can't afford it. You are making criminals out of law-abiding people. You might not think that law enforcement is going to look to your guidance to determine what the ounce limits are, but they will be, because you're the only experts out there who are going to determine what an ounce is. Someone who takes a 1,200 milligram water-soluble tincture and makes punch for their Super Bowl party would be a trafficker with a 15-year jail sentence, because that would be 10 ounces. That's right. 1,200 milligrams of a tincture is 1 ounce, but 1,200 milligrams of beverages is 10 ounces. 10 ounces is trafficking under Vermont law. Your guidance is going to drive customers to the black market. And it's going to drive people to the online hemp-derived market for the year that it still exists. Hold on, I'm going to go on mute and off mute just to see if I can clear the echo. When people leave this market for those parallel markets, you deprive the state of tax revenues and you endanger consumer safety with untested products. And worse yet, you reward online sellers who will ship to any address in Vermont without ID checks. You also turn a transaction limit in law into something else, perhaps a daily limit. We don't know. You're exceeding your delegated authority by rewriting rules outside of ordinary rulemaking process to say that the transaction limit is something other than transaction limit. The guidance expressly prohibits quote unquote serial transactions without clarifying what frequency is permitted. And I don't know whether you intend it to be an hourly limit or a daily limit or something else, but the law gives you the authority to set a transaction limit. And if you're going to try to exceed that and make it something else, if you're going to try to amend your rules, do it the right way, not through guidance. That's not the right way. I want to just make sure that you hear the frustration in the industry. We are tired of blow after blow from our regulators who are not doing anything to go after the black market, not doing anything to go after the online hemp-derived market that competes with us without paying taxes, without paying fees, without following the regulations. But it seems you constantly find new ways to make working in this industry harder. This guidance is not a legitimate good faith starting point. It is an attack on the market. The Vermont Cannabis Action Fund, its almost 60 members call on you to rescind this document and start fresh with a return to the collaborative bottoms-up approach that marked the start of this market. This is not the way. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Anyone else or a public comment? And if you join by a phone, you can unmute yourself by hitting *6. Jesse? Jesse, Graham Central.
There we go. Hey everyone. Thanks for your time. I feel like, I just generally agree that this is not a helpful, guidance for customers. I do believe that it will push people to the black market, and it's pretty ill-timed as well, as people start to make their purchases more, based around winter movements. I think that's problematic as well. In the winter, people buy less frequently, and so limiting, what they can buy with traveling makes that extra challenging. Graham Central definitely opposes these changes. Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse. I got a hand raised. It just says TBS.
Hi, this is Dora Palmieri. I'm the owner of the Bud Stop, a dispensary, and also a Tier 1 grow in Danville. I'm just going to echo and join everyone else's comments. Incredibly disappointed and sad to see this, especially at this time when we're all struggling in the industry. I take a deep breath because, sometimes I understand people may be well-intended, but, I think we've heard from so many people here, and I work the sales floor almost every day when I'm in the dispensary. So I have as I'm sure many other owners do, we see the customers and wow, making purchase limits this complicated makes absolutely no sense. I mean, sticking to an 8,400 milligram approach, which we've been using now for 3 years, and has worked. I mean, I haven't heard anybody present any rationale or indication that it's failing somehow or it's creating problems. I mean, I don't see it in the industry. I don't hear about it from anybody because we, as was so well said by so many people today, we use POS systems that have an amazing ability to calculate all of this for us in a really important way. And they are so important, not just for ourselves internally to make sure that we are not, going beyond what our mandate is and selling a product that is federally illegal, but they're important to our third party people that we work with, our banking. I'm part of Green Check. Every single sale that we do in that dispensary, our bankers look at. And if there's some problem, they come right back at us because that is a way to keep us compliant both here in Vermont and federally. Creating some, arbitrary system where you want bud tenders at the point of sale to start making calculations is just phenomenally disturbing. I don't know about everybody else, but I can tell you as the owner, I do not want my license and my ability to maintain a license to be affected by a bud tender doing a miscalculation of a point system manually, which is unheard of. I can't even imagine any other retail where something like this would be suggested. We have electronic systems for a reason. These systems are excellent at making sure that we don't sell beyond what we should be selling beyond. We follow these systems. These systems are used to report to third parties that also need to know that we are following the law here in Vermont and that we are also abiding by, what the Cole memo set out years ago so that the federal government wouldn't come after us. It is a trail system so everybody can see what we're doing, how we do it, when we do it, all the time. I'm phenomenally disturbed that, we would now want to go to some other system, that is irrationally based because products are treated differently, which makes no common sense whatsoever. I think there were so many great comments. I just want to say Tito was dead on saying, we should be in a different place right now. We should be trying to help retailers, get, not make things more difficult. We want to move as much product as we can legally. I don't think there's any dispensary owner here in the state who wants to do things illegally. We follow all the rules as we can, and we need systems that make sense, that are not arbitrary, that aren't capricious. I mean, I kind of look at this and I wonder, why are we treating different products differently now all of a sudden? 3 years and we've, no problems. I mean, I rely on my POS system to make sure that every bud tender who's working there is following the law because it will not allow anyone to check out above that 28 grams. So, I'm going to respectfully request that you take all of these comments in, really think about this stuff because not only does it not make any sense, the impact that it is going to have on us as businesses, small businesses in rural areas, and I will echo what everyone has said. I am running a dispensary in a rural area, and believe me, customers are traveling sometimes an hour and a half to 2 hours to come get product. They are not coming every week or every other day. And when you impose this kind of a limitation, you are going to absolutely impact sales at dispensaries. And that is absolutely going to impact our ability in an already fragile market to move product. I'm going to absolutely, I think, there is a pretty, I think, direct and reasonable solution, which is 8,400 milligrams across the board. We've been doing that since day one. And I will also echo, it is absolutely outrageous to think that people are buying product at a dispensary with a 20% tax and reselling it. It's not going to happen. Come into a dispensary and see how hard it is for us to move product now and sell it with that 20% on top. Now imagine somebody taking that price and then trying to sell it out again. That's not what's happening, and we all know that. The biggest concern we should be having is the illegal market, which poaches a lot of our customers. And when you put these new limits on top of us, all you're doing is driving Vermonters to an illegal market or across state lines to buy products that have not been tested or vetted. So I am going to absolutely, say this is terrible. And, we need to stick to something that's science-based and something we can apply that across the board with, without being arbitrary about it. Because once you become arbitrary about how you're applying it to different product groups, it begs the question as to why. Why are certain products being treated so differently than other products? It doesn't make a lot of sense. And I invite any of you to please come to, I'll open up my dispensary just so you can see what it's like to be in a dispensary and transact with actual customers every day. We had lots of great comments, and I'm going to emphasize them. Customers are already confused when they come in. They're not sure already out of the gate what they can do, can't do, and now we're going to create even more confusion. Boy, you can't come up with more ways to drive customers out of the legal market. So I'm just going to ask you, please rethink this. Please take all this commentary to heart and understand that if you proceed to impose this type of guidance, which it is, it really doesn't. I'm going to agree with Andrea. This is other than, this shouldn't be the bane of guidance. This is a legislative thing, in my opinion, because you have gone way beyond. And if this is, this just strikes me as so unusual at this point. And I think a lot of other people have said this, when all of us are really struggling to stabilize this market. So I hope that you can hear this and take it to heart and understand that the industry is in an uproar about it, because the impact that this will have is significant and dramatic. I mean, I came into this industry, I know we've all invested a lot of money, to year 3 come in and see this out of the blue really makes me wonder where the interests lie. I will leave it at that, but I would respectfully request that, if you're going to do guidance, let's make it 8,400 milligrams across the board. It is already something we do in our POS systems. It doesn't require bud tenders or anybody else to do a special point calculation on the side. I guess they're going to have a piece of paper with them. I mean, it is, if you ever have been in a dispensary and worked in a busy dispensary, that is so unmanageable. It's beyond belief that someone would even recommend that. So please, let's keep this market beautiful and viable, because it is just it's an unusual, there are no other, and I've been to a lot of other states markets like this. So I do say that we've done this incredible job to create an incredible craft market. Please, let's keep it going. Let's not destroy it with this kind of arbitrary approach out of the blue all of a sudden, creating an issue where, honestly, I don't know that anybody in the industry would, that's what really it took me aback. I didn't even know this was an issue. We're always enforcing 28-gram limits across the board. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Dora. Adam?
Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Adam. I am a bud tender for Lake Effect, Vermont. I want to let you all know that this is going to be hard on us. And especially for the bud tenders. I want to go off who on the bud stop just said. It's going to be hard to manage all this in the point system. And for us to be trained in one way and to go into this whole other direction of point system and calculate, it just doesn't help. And I also think medical patients are going to get really the crap out of the stick here. And it's really unfortunate. So I just wanted to say that. And I really thank everyone for saying all that they have said.
Thank you, Adam. Patricia?
Going for over an hour now.
Hi, can you hear me?
The filibuster.
Yes.
Hello.
You fuckers.
Sorry, I'm driving. So, I just wanted to. The woman from the bud stop was so well spoken. I don't really have much to add, but I just think this whole thing is such bananas, and I am just so disappointed. We work so hard. Everybody in this industry just wants the best, and businesses are going to close. People are going to lose their jobs because of this. And I think you just really need to think about that, take that into consideration, because that's not where we should be going. We should be growing. We should be a team. We shouldn't be enemies with the board. We should all want the same thing for this market, and that's growth. And we bring in so much money for the state of Vermont. And I always feel like we're treated like criminals when we just are trying to do the best. I hope that you will revise these, just decide not to do this, because you're really taking the rights of Vermont citizens away. And I just don't think that's okay. And if we do go with this system, I would like you to come down and tell the 76-year-old woman whose husband is homebound, who comes once a month to get her 6 tinctures, that she can only buy one now because she can't get there more than once a month. Or my father, who relies on his beverage every night, one beverage, can only get out of the house to get like maybe once or twice a month, and he buys 24 at a time. And it's just going to affect so many people. That's all I have to say. Thank you for listening. Oh, by the way, I own Sunday Drive in Woodstock. Take care.
Thank you. Any other public comments? And again, if you joined via phone and would like to comment, you can hit *6. It's on mute. Okay, I will close the public.
You accidentally muted yourself.
Oh, sorry about that. Yep, sorry. We're having some echoing issues. Patrick's telling me. Sorry. Really appreciate all the feedback. I just, I think the question about whether there should be transaction limits at all is not a decision for us. We have to have them. They're set the way they are. We have actively opposed every cap that's in the bill at one point, or the kind of underlying statutes at one point or another, for the very reasons that you've described. We've written reports to the fact that this just pushes people to alternative markets that are, generally speaking, less safe than our regulated market. But I did hear some recurring themes. The limits are arbitrary and confusing. This transaction limit disproportionately negatively impacts rural Vermonters, medical patients, elderly consumers. That this policy supports the illicit market or the intoxicating hemp markets or markets in other states. That any changes of this significance, or I guess any changes, need industry input and an implementation window. Those are all very valid points. I appreciate them. I think tomorrow's meeting on this policy will be about really trying to solicit advice on solutions. I heard the 8,400 milligram kind of across the board. That is certainly one solution. I think, I remember talking with the lead sponsor of Act 164 about this transaction limit. And he was very concerned about people buying large quantities of cannabis and selling them to kids and other illicit, people that can't purchase at stores. It may sound ridiculous. This was before the market ever started. Certainly, this was a fear, along with a lot of other fears that were encapsulated in legislation. I think you guys are right that because we've had an 8,400 milligram limit for so long, and we haven't seen a lot of these problems realized, that there may be a good argument in the legislature that this transaction limit should increase. But it's not something that we can just do. No more than we could just ignore the kind of potency cap limits, whether we agree with them or not. So anyway, I think tomorrow I'm hoping that we don't have to rehash the same themes, but start thinking about what this policy could look like so that the board can kind of reconsider or adjust it as needed.
Yes, please. Thank you, everybody, for your thoughts. Certainly, I don't think the intent of anybody was to strike this type of nerve with updating this guidance. I think if you look at 8,400 milligrams, that's in effect most of the time not a purchasing limit on anything. That's well above what typical transactions are when we look at average market basket prices. Obviously, rural Vermonters, who I myself am one, who have to travel distances to go to any type of store, like to buy in bulk, quote unquote, from time to time. But I think what this was trying to wrangle in where specific products kind of fall in this equivalency, and also, how can we meet current market trends where they are. I do say with a degree of, close to 100% certainty that other states use point systems. I'm fairly confident in saying that Dutchie and FlowHub and others have the ability to enter point systems similar to this into your software. So I know that there's a lot of concerns out there. The intent was to make it easier per transaction. I know that some folks don't like the point system. All folks, it seems, most of them, at least on first blush, before we dig into the data on how many transactions this would actually affect over a calendar year, don't like where these limits are set. Please bring productivity tomorrow. As staff talks about this, I think we want all that feedback. Guidance documents, we publish guidance documents regularly. We update guidance documents regularly. They don't always go into effect the day after they're published or the day that they're published for reasons such as this. So, I can appreciate the sentiment and the difference between guidance, rules, regulations, and law. There's ample opportunity to update this. I've heard a lot about beverages. Certainly something I'd be interested in addressing. Tinctures, I think that's one that makes logical sense, and certainly understand clones and immature plants. So again, appreciate the feedback. I don't think anybody's out to make an enemy of anybody. I hope that sentiment doesn't ring true with the people that I can't see on the other side of the screen. But again, I think, I certainly appreciate the feedback, and let's just try and be productive. Look at your systems, try and figure out which transactions, if you can, would have gone over this 100-point system. I think that would be an interesting exercise. There's a lot of quantitative, emotional information that's been gathered here. The other end of that is let's look at the data. Let's try and understand where the actual bottlenecks would be from a transaction perspective, not a daily limit, a transaction perspective.
I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Gabe, I just remembered I forgot to update the agenda. Patrick wanted to include an item about adopting our regular board meeting schedule for the first 6 months of 2026. Is it appropriate to do that now?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to add that agenda item as the last thing before we adjourn. And it's not changing at all. It's going to be the last Wednesday at 1 o'clock of every month. But we do need to adopt that at some point. Okay. Next on the list is this request to relocate a retailer from Alburg to Burlington. And if I recall, that requires board approval. And so we've received some, well, I should just say, Julie, you had noted that you wanted to recuse yourself from this decision.
Yeah, so I want to make sure it's clear. I don't have any financial entanglement that creates a conflict, but someone involved is a close personal friend of my family's, and so I don't want there to be the appearance of a conflict should they benefit from whatever the board decides. So I'm actually going to physically step out.
Okay.
And so somebody just text me when it's time to come back. Okay.
All right. Gabe, do you just want to walk us through quickly what the standard is that we need to apply to this decision? I know we've done it grand total of 1 time prior to this. And so we were kind of breaking new ground last time. But can you tell us what the rule requires for us to approve location change?
Happy to. This is governed by your Rule 1.7.2 that was adopted in the middle of July through the through the rulemaking process. It's really a implementation of the instruction the General Assembly gave this board in 7 VSA 881A5F to sort out retail concentration. What the rule says is that a retail cannabis establishment requesting a license amendment to relocate pursuant to Rule 1.17, which is the one that applies to all relocation requests, may relocate to a different municipality only if, in the board's sole discretion, The relocation would improve the geographic distribution of retail cannabis establishments in conformity with the purposes of Section 881A5F, which is the instruction to come up with some citing principles. So what that translates to is a really narrow mandate to look at a request to relocate a retailer, only applies to retailers, but to look at a request to relocate a retailer and assess whether it would improve geographic distribution by either improving access or alleviating concentration. At your previous meeting, you made some decisions and had some discussion about how to implement this, how to operationalize, what you're looking at. And what you had decided at that meeting was that you want to look at a 15-mile radius around each cannabis establishment to look for overlaps. That was sort of a way to correct for the idiosyncrasies of municipal borders. We had been very intent on focusing on how many are in the municipality, and I think you had said, run 15-mile radius analysis and look there. So that's what you had done before. But the question is really a narrow one. It's really not, what does the board think of the community effects or the desirability of the thing from a social perspective? It's just, does it make concentration better or worse?
Okay. So we did receive some documentation from the applicant. We received some public comment, and from
municipal officials
and some
elected statewide officials,
or county.
Yep.
I just, it's hard to have spent the last 2 years in the legislature being told that the situation in Burlington is, not desirable, not what was intended. The legislature, gave us some rulemaking authority specifically to increase the geographic distribution because of the Burlington situation. And then earlier this year, they almost took away our authority to issue new retail licenses at all. And they cited Burlington quite frequently. I think so from that point of view, I just don't understand how we could, if we allowed this move, I just don't understand how we could ever deny any move.
I'm with you 100%. I think we just heard a lot about rural access to cannabis, understanding where Alburg is in the state. I've been to Alburg, northwest corner of the state. Relocating a license that's almost on the New York border up there and Canadian border, even though it is the new North End, Burlington is a precarious shape, I guess you could say, right? I'm not sure, even with the information we were presented, the questions that we posed in a recorded meeting around the previous one of these, I'm not sure that all of those questions and concerns were addressed.
I did just a little bit of analysis here. There are 0 other dispensaries within 15 miles of the current location.
I think the closest one is about 25.
Well, there's some in St. Albans that are a little bit closer. Yeah. So it's actually decreasing geographic distribution for that 15-mile radius, wherever that's worth. And this would be adding it's hard for us to know what's going on. It sounds like they're trying to co-locate with an existing retailer. So it would, even if they're not doing that.
I'm hesitant to kind of want, because I don't know specifics. Like, I know my licensing team probably does. It seems as if this business owner is trying to buy the building and open a manufacturing and cultivation facility in that building, and then hopeful that they can replace an existing retailer in that building. Right? Okay.
We don't know that for sure, though. The thing is like, there's on paper, this looks like it's adding another one. Within 2 miles of the kind of
I guess my point is even if one leaves or relinquishes and another one moves in, it doesn't improve the retail density conundrum in Burlington. It maintains the status quo, if nothing else.
Right.
And with all things considered, in good conscience, I agree with you. I don't know how we can, with a straight face, allow that relocation to occur into Chittenden County, but Burlington specifically.
All right. Do you need any more discussion on this?
No.
Gabe, do we need a motion to deny the requests?
Yeah, I think that would be smart. I think you could you could have a motion to find that the application would not improve retail concentration issues and deny it on that basis. That's where you're going.
I move that this relocation change would not improve retail density issues in Burlington.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Julie's the motion gal amongst us. So
sorry, we lost our expert.
So maybe it should be friendly amendment would not improve the geographic distribution of retail cannabis establishments.
In conformity with the statute.
In conformity with the statute. Okay, with that amendment, I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Can this person reapply if the facts on the ground change?
Oh, yes, of course. I mean, I don't think they'll change very fast, but if the situation changes, this isn't prejudicial to their ability to come back.
Okay. And they could try for a place other than Burlington too.
They could, and of course, it's only retail that's affected. So if there's desire to put manufacturing there, that's unaffected by this.
Okay. Okay. Yep. Great. All right. Melissa, would you mind grabbing Julie? Next on the agenda is the Act 56 12A fee report. I'm going to just wait for Julie before we tee this up. I'll get it going. Okay, so Act 56 report. This report had kind of multiple distinct purposes, in my view. Originally, there was a desire to adjust fees. By the time the Senate was able to take testimony on it, the budget had already passed, and the proposal was not revenue neutral. And therefore, the Senate was unwilling to make any changes and required a report. Part of that report was around fees, but there was a kind of secondary, a different committee, the Economic Development Committee, was really concerned about the lack of a contribution to the Cannabis Business Development Fund to support social equity businesses, which they've done several times, kind of not consistently. So they asked for a report on that. And then they also asked for a report on whether a portion of the cannabis excise tax should be dedicated to the Land Access and Opportunity Board to support their work. So in order to kind of just get this done effectively, the three of us split up the kind of three aspects of the report. I mostly worked on the fee section. Kyle mostly worked on the cannabis business development section. And then Julie worked with the LAOB on that section. So this is the draft report. There's a few decisions that we want to make before we submit it. So I think what I'm going to do is walk through the report. It's quite long. It's 22 pages. So I'm going to try and be fast about it. But I'll pause at the moments where I think, I'd like to get your input on the fee portions. And then I'm going to turn things over to Kyle to do the Cannabis Business Development Fund portion, and Julie, you for the LAOB portion. Okay. So introduction, describing what the charge was summary of all cannabis fees in effect for FY26 and a projection of fee revenues for FY26, any available information regarding comparable fees in other jurisdictions, policies or trends that might affect the viability of the fee amount, and then recommendation how fees may be adjusted to better promote the intent of the General Assembly to encourage participation in the regulated market by small local farmers and social equity applicants. And then the secondary part of the report, the Cannabis Board was further directed to recommend whether a portion of the cannabis excise tax should be allocated to the Cannabis Business Development Fund and the Land Access and Opportunity Board. We conducted a number of internal interviews with our staff here, external interviews with licensees, including the licensee relinquishment interviews. We conducted a number of focus groups with small cultivators and social equity businesses. We sent out surveys. We've talked with our partner agencies at ACCD and elsewhere, and we did desk research. So summary of all the cannabis fees and fee revenue. This is just a table that's attached to the end. I won't jump down there, but we can take a look at it. I think our fees bring in roughly 2.5 million, but that's
and just to be clear on that first part, some of those, the small cultivators and the social equity, like those are things that we had CPPC do for us. Yeah,
right.
just to make clear that
yeah,
if people were like, when
some of
was that
those,
meeting?
yeah, some of those focus groups we had
Yeah.
our consultants do so that people could kind of provide input to the board without maybe, feeling pressure to say one thing or another.
Yeah.
So comparable fees in other jurisdictions. Here, the main point that I wanted to make is that while fees in general are meant to be reasonably related to the cost of providing regulatory oversight, that in the cannabis context, trying to shift the entire burden of this agency onto strictly the market participants, the licensees, would make a very inaccessible and inequitable market. We didn't, not just Vermont recognize this. Every other adult use state, with the exception of New Mexico, has come to the same conclusion and set fees to achieve certain policy priorities. For instance, scaling fees to encourage participation by small local farmers or social equity businesses. And then they cover any shortfall between what the fees bring in and what the agency's budget is with cannabis excise tax. I just wanted the legislature to remember that they made this very conscious decision, and that if they try and backtrack on that decision, it may have kind of a devastating impact on some of the market participants. And then I just cite a few examples of other states that have set fees lower than the agency budget and supplemented that with excise tax or general fund. So I put that in this section just because when they're looking at comparable fees, it's not always easy to look at another state's fees and say we should just benchmark to those. But I do have a list of, I think, these states' fees in Appendix B. Policies and trends affecting fee viability. So I make the point here just that the viability of that fee revenue is really dependent upon the number of licensees that we have and their ability to actually pay these fees. And I wanted to just note that there are some real structural and market factors that make this industry challenging that aren't present in other small businesses. As a result of this dual status of cannabis, there are high compliance costs and financial instability. Obviously, regulatory compliance in this industry is much more extreme than most other small businesses. Banking and finance is, I think we're all aware of what that situation is. 280E, insurance costs, the lack of small business support, advertising restrictions. These are all kind of unique to the cannabis industry that disproportionately impact these businesses. And then there's just basic market dynamics that also are generally not present in other industries. There's this seasonal oversupply problem.
No jumps.
That's exacerbated by the number of outdoor cultivators that we have, and of course is driven largely by this being a purely intra-state market. There's demand volatility, which is largely outside of the control of our licensees. When we see border states, there's now a long line of dispensaries that have opened in the last year in New York that are taking our border consumers that we're purchasing here. And we've seen a lot of decline in Canadian tourists that are also impact demand. And then, of course, there's illicit market competition and the intoxicating hemp market, these kind of parallel markets that, enjoy advantages over the regulated market in price and convenience, not subject to regulatory oversight, potency caps, delivery bans, or excise tax. So ultimately, a major theme, both in our focus groups and our exit interviews, are that, minor fee adjustments are not really the thing that are driving business failures. It's mostly these other factors, including the high cost of banking, insurance, and testing. Reducing fees would allow businesses to reallocate funds towards those expenses. And then we also heard that the timing of fees sometimes causes hardship when they coincide with paying insurance premiums for the year. And then because of the way we rolled out our initial set of licenses, a lot of small cultivators have to pay their tax bills at the same month that they pay their licensing fees. So I talked more about this in one of the recommendations. So fee adjustment recommendations, again, this is to better, the specific charge is how do we adjust fees to better support small cultivators and social equity applicants. So I define what those two cohorts mean. And then I just once again kind of drive home the point that it wasn't just us, the CCB, when we were initially setting fees, that said that higher fees will not cover the regulatory cost of the agency because they would depress entrepreneurial interest in the market. It was the Joint Fiscal Office that analyzed our fee proposals and warned the legislature that no matter how high you set the fees, it would be insufficient revenue, and setting them too high runs the risk of stifling the market. And that low fees would generate a more thriving market. So that's what the legislature did. They adopted as the lower fee schedule that we proposed and supplemented our budget with cannabis excise tax. They scaled cultivation fees such that the smallest tiers pay the least amount per square foot, and indoor operators paying slightly higher than outdoor operators. And then they created a graduated fee schedule for social equity businesses. This is all just kind of historical context for them. But I wanted to kind of let them know that this has been successful in achieving those stated policy goals. We have 362 licensed cultivators. 74% of them are tier 1. 91 of our overall 576 licensees, or 16%, are social equity businesses. We have over 5,300 unique products, and we've significantly exceeded every single one of JFO's early kind of pre-market fee revenue projections in each fiscal year. They generally kind of project out 3 years. So, while the market is exciting, the licensees face significant challenges, but these underlying dynamics give Vermont a unique competitive advantage to be a regional magnet for cannabis tourism and a net exporter of cannabis products if interstate commerce were to be permitted. So again, I just want to make sure the legislature doesn't just think about revenue maximization and thinks about the vibrancy of the market as a whole if they're going to adjust fees. Operational costs are the primary driver of licensee licensing relinquishments. If they are going to increase fees, that's going to just exacerbate the problem. So I have two recommendations. One is about how to better support small local farmers with fee adjustments, and then one how to kind of help social equity applicants with fee adjustments. What I do is I just looked at the New England states and averaged their price per square foot for indoor at the smallest tier, and it's 85 cents per square foot for indoor amongst the New England states, and it's 37 cents per square foot on average for outdoor. If we benchmark to these averages for tier ones, it would cost the state $180,000 in lost revenue or foregone revenue. I know that it's going to be a tough fiscal year. We're already seeing the impacts of the federal budget on Vermont, and they're going to be scrambling to not create, holes in the budget. So I do suggest kind of pay-fors. I can't imagine they're going to go with these, but maybe they would. But it would be increasing retail fees and indoor cultivator fees for 4 and 5. I focus on indoor, larger tier indoor, mostly because of their kind of yield potentials, their ability to operate year round, and then the kind of economies of scale that they can achieve. Recommendation 2, cap social equity fees at 75% of the standard rate. So just make their kind of 30-year renewal rate permanent. So I note that about 20 states have social equity programs. Very often they involve fee waivers of some degree or another. Financial instability is just a recurring theme that we hear from these businesses in our focus groups. No, traditional banking or lines of credit to kind of make ends meet in a tough, for acute financial situations. And that it would be ironic to really reduce barriers and try to promote participation by social equity applicants, and then not give them essentially the tools they need to succeed, at least in the short term. And that may just perpetuate the harm of cannabis prohibition and then cannabis legalization.
But the fee waiver was set by rule or by statute?
It was set by rule. Yeah. So, but I think if we're going to do anything that creates budget pressure, we should get some directive.
Put that part out, right? Like
Yes.
Even if we're given the authority to do something in rule, sometimes there is another authority that's out there.
Yeah. So these are the 2 decision points for us. Are we okay with this? I mean, again, this only focuses on tier 1 cultivators, not tier 2. And I didn't do tier 2 mostly because, the legislative charge was about small cultivators, and small cultivators are defined in statute as tier 1. And then the pay for, may be devastating for some retailers. We don't know, or for the tier 4 and tier 5.
I mean, it does feel like retail seems like the license with, or among the licenses that have the most overhead. So to increase the fees, that seems like a challenge. Is this the proposal you have? Is this similar to what the legislature considered last year with increasing indoor fees? And
so the proposal that they did last year originally was just a fee reduction for all outdoor and mixed tier.
Yeah.
And then when the kind of money committees got a hold of it, they said, well, we need to raise some revenue to offset these costs.
Right.
And so there is an increase to indoors 3, 4, and 5 last year. And then even that left a budget gap. So they decided to scrap it and turn it into a report.
Okay.
I guess in your opinion, this was the easiest option as a pay for to kind of present. I mean, I wouldn't call it a recommendation of ours. It's if the legislature wants to maintain that fee revenue as is, this is an option to adjust things on the other side of the equation.
If there's a desire for revenue neutrality, and there's other ways to get to revenue neutrality, they could create new license types that don't have high demands on our staff. They could increase, product registration fees or some other fee. It's just to get to 180,000, you have to kind of focus where on the.
And that 180,000 doesn't include any funding from the excise tax, right?
No.
Yeah.
And so it could be that too, yeah. But in general, does this recommendation, are these two responsive to the question in your mind? Do you want anything additional or anything removed?
Just for point of clarity, and for the folks listening, when we talk about decreasing tier 1 fees from their current fee, I know you did it by a cents per square foot perspective. What does that equate to what the fee would be if this was taken up versus what it is now?
Right now we're at $1.50 per square foot for tier 1, and I'm saying for indoor, and I'm saying drop it to 85. So whatever that, it's like cutting it in half almost.
I don't want to do that on the fly.
Yeah, it's a little bit less than cutting it in half.
Okay.
I'm fine with this recommendation. I don't quite know where this will go and what the legislature will consider this year, but I'm fine with this being a recommendation for now.
I think that's a theme of the entire report, right?
Yes, it is.
So we'll see what happens.
I do suggest that you could use essentially cannabis excise tax or the Cannabis Business Development Fund or to pay for the social equity cuts, because the Cannabis Business Development Fund is dedicated to social equity. So if you increase the beneficiary payments, you could kind of, instead of potentially just pay for that 25% reduction through that.
Right. So so that funding could be used to fill the fees gap.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So we have heard a lot of fee discussion that don't directly answer the question about how the fees could be adjusted to better promote social equity or small cultivators. But I did feel like it was worth discussing them in this report, because the legislature is not going to just want to do fees every single year. If they're going to do a big fee bill for us, they may want to do them all at once. These are kind of just incidental to, they would benefit the entire industry, not specifically, or they would benefit portions of the entire industry, not specifically small cultivators or social equity. So consideration 1, these are all just considerations. We don't come out for or against them in this report. We just talk about the rationale that we've heard. Again, reduce fees for all outdoor cultivators. This was the thing that they heard last year. This is the proposal that they were considering. So not just tier 1, but all outdoor cultivators. So here I kind of just regurgitate some of the arguments that we've heard in the past that, while the differential in startup and operating expenses between indoor and outdoors is stark, much higher for an indoor, the environmental impacts of indoor cultivation could be considered in setting fees. They operate year round. They require these energy intensive lighting, heating and cooling, ventilation, dehumidification, water handling, CO2 supplementation and storage. They're causing a lot of energy usage in the adult use markets that have them, according to this Colorado report. We received an own report that indoor, controlled environment agriculture is the most energy intensive industrial process on a price per square foot basis, although that's recently been surpassed by data centers. And that, outdoor cultivation is, uses natural light, natural air circulation, and actually sequesters carbon. There's a study about the Canadian cannabis industry that just says that outdoor cultivation is 6 to 10 times less carbon intensive and reduces environmental impacts by 90% compared to indoor cultivation. And that the General Assembly has had a history of actually trying to support outdoor cultivators through the last 3, legislative sessions, including making, current use accommodations, Act 250 accommodations, local zoning accommodations. And despite all those attempts to support small cultivators or outdoor cultivators, we just keep hearing that diversified farms that get federal assistance through the USDA or under agricultural easements, have to jump through a million hoops in order to actually become a diversified farm that includes cannabis.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the onset of this, I think the thought was there that the small licenses would be part of this larger, revenue, be a portion of a revenue stream for an existing farm. But I don't think that they thought through that component. And they also, we'll talk more in my section, they didn't give the proper support and guardrails to kind of ensure that a small agricultural business has the support that it needs to kind of first, incubate and then accelerate.
The next one, create a 2-year option for registering products. I kind of describe the importance of product registration, how much it costs, and some of the basic components of it. I note that this can be administratively burdensome for licensees on the front end. It's burdensome for us too, but we're kind of the opinion that those burdens, the benefits outweigh the burdens, especially if we're thinking about kind of product recalls and stop sales that might come if we weren't to do this. I think the industry last year, earlier this year, asked the legislature to create a prorated biennial registration option, a 2-year product registration option. And we were largely supportive of it at the time. I think we still are. I think it's a rational thing to do. But we have then, and we are reiterating some of the operational challenges. We would have to update our licensing portal. We're not currently under contract to do that work, although we have scoped a phase 2 for our licensing portal, which this could be a part of. But if the legislature thinks that this can just kind of happen and not give us the financial resources and the implementation timeline, they should just be aware that those things need to be included. I mentioned a potential downside consumer safety risk. So we require testing for every registration and renewal, and then every mid-cycle batch that's produced. So having a 2-year registration could incentivize to just run a huge batch, create a huge batch of products in order to just not have to test them again and just not worry about testing them for 2 years. So this a lot of products can be properly stored, but some are not shelf stable over time and will destabilize, spoil, or degrade. We've been hearing a lot about this in the context of seltzer or any emulsions kind of separating.
Vape cartridges.
Vape cartridges degrading. Yep. I note that that's a possibility. So I also say, but these can be overcome. We could potentially limit batch sizes, or we could require some sort of accelerated stability testing be submitted for this specific product that's getting a 2-year registration, because some of them will be fine. The legislature, if they wanted to consider it, they could consider best by dates. I know Colorado just implemented best by dates. Anyway, I also note that all of those options really contravene the underlying purpose of a 2-year product registration, which is about kind of administrative and financial efficiency.
Where did Colorado, did they do the testing required to figure out what the best by date is? I'm intrigued by doing a best by date.
So all they did was they said that flour needs to have a best by date after 9 months from its produced on date.
Okay.
It's not mandatory to metric doesn't stop the sale if it exceeds that 9 months. So it's a voluntary thing, but it's got to be on there.
Yeah. But if we had data, could we at some point set the product registration to match with a Best By date.
Yeah, and I think that would require either just the accelerated stability testing or actually just, waiting for 2 years for some of these products. Create a 2-year option for employee ID cards. I think, again, practically, it makes a lot of sense. I just mentioned the same caveats that, this requires back-end IT upgrades. So time and fiscal resources to do this.
Is the IT side of it having a 2-year option and not just like, is it expanding the options that creates the IT problem? Like if we switched from a 1-year to a 2-year,
right?
That seems like a simpler switch
that would be a simpler switch. It would just be, that would be better. I think that would cost $50 times the number of employees we have.
Right. I'm wondering if that's rather than saying option, like it's better to switch to 2 years for certain things because
I think that would be a system override, and I don't know. It seems like that would be an easier thing for the IT team to adjust. That being said, I don't know for sure because we didn't ask those questions.
Yeah. Okay. I know even small IT changes they take a long time and they're expensive.
Yeah. Well, I can add a line in there that you could just make not a 2-year option, but just make an employee ID card good for 2 years. The reason why, again, that wasn't accepted last year, because this was on the table also, was some people don't want to pay $100. They weren't willing to make it a $50, like cut the fee in half, essentially. They were willing to prorate
you want
it.
$50 for 2 years.
Yes.
I get that.
Yeah. Create a payment plan option for fees. This is what I was mentioning earlier, that sometimes it's not the amount of the fee, it's the timing of it that really is detrimental. So, having the legislature permit the board to create a payment plan option for licensing fees that could spread the expense out over the course of the year. And then, I just note that we're not a collection agency. If someone doesn't honor that payment plan, our only recourse really is to fine them, or suspend their license or revoke their license. That will just exacerbate a distressed license. So I'd say an alternative could be just have an ability to reduce fees on a case-by-case basis, a needs-based assessment. You could provide access to the Cannabis Business Development Fund to a broader universe of businesses so that they could actually access financial support when they're, coming up on some major expenses. I also thought it might be nice to allow every licensee, if they wanted to kind of just change their renewal timeline, create a one-time allowance where licensees could move their renewal date so that it doesn't coincide with major expenses.
Mm-hmm.
And if we prorated that, we may be able to do it. I mean, we may be able to do it ourselves, because it wouldn't necessarily, over a 2-year period, it wouldn't change the fee revenue. But
it might, our reporting may be severely impacted.
Okay.
Just saying, because everything is tied to specific dates, you start moving the dates, then.
So the year-over-year stuff.
Yeah, we won't be able to see those trends as easily if we do that.
All right.
When we say doing this based off of need, who would define need?
I think they would either have to give us direction to do it ourselves, or it could be done by someone else.
Need is a very broad word that means something different to everybody.
Is the tax department the only department that has a collections unit? Are there other? I have no idea.
What is there, the victims advocates?
Okay.
I think have this. Child support, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a different. I mean, that's.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if we were to have this, and is there a model that we could replicate easily? Is the IT already out there that we could, buy into? Yeah.
Shift electronic payment processing fees to users. This is something that was raised as something that maybe we should consider. Not by the industry, of course, but applicants currently can pay licensing fees by check, credit, or debit card or ACH bank transfer. We contract with a company called NIC Services to process those debit card or ACH payments, and they charge a fee for each transfer. Currently, the CCB pays for those fees. In FY25, that represented approximately $76,000. If the legislature needs to find money and they're okay with passing those fees on, again, increasing the exposure of our licensed community, they could require that we shift those transaction fees to the individual applicants. I just raised the same caveats here that, making that shift is again an IT expense, and that it would likely increase the utilization of check payments, which we have seen historically have resulted in licensing delays and certain disruptions.
The budget office ask.
Every agency is exploring this right now.
Yeah.
Some agencies pass this fee off, some agencies cover it. There's no consistency from one agency to the next. And so there's a conversation about having all agencies shift this cost to consumer.
And it's
users.
not already baked in because the fees don't cover the entire regulatory cost, right?
Just make sure people know where ideas come
from. And then require registration of certain hemp-derived products. Again, I don't like to sweep all hemp products into the same class. I just mentioned, as I did it in my opening remarks, that the cannabis market competes on a very uneven playing field with national intoxicating hemp processors that have emerged since the passage of the Farm Bill. They use the kind of more nefarious ones. You exploit loopholes in the definition of hemp to create products with varying concentrations of synthetic and semi-synthetic cannabinoids, primarily Delta-9 THC that's converted from CBD. And they claim that because it's hemp, that none of the state or federal regulations restricting interstate commerce, testing, labeling, potency caps, advertising, age gating, or excise tax apply to their products. This is an unacceptable consumer safety risk. We've tested a few of these products, and they're all have bad stuff in them or have inaccurate labels. At least the ones that we've tested.
And those are not necessarily local products.
Not the local products, no. I mean, that's why I was trying to make that distinction.
It's worth reiterating it.
Yeah, we have a number of very above board hemp producers in the state. This also, poses an existential threat to the cannabis establishments that are complying with state and federal regulatory requirements. So hemp processor regulation is a broader topic that should be addressed comprehensively. A number of legislators have reached out, and there's a desire to deal with hemp processor regulation. But for the purposes of this report, it seems like we should, at the minimum, be holding hemp products, whether they're imported or produced here, any ones that are intended for human ingestion or inhalation that contain more than trace amounts of THC that are incidental to the CBD extraction process, to be held to the same health and safety regulations as traditional cannabis products. Enforcement could be achieved by requiring product registration, which we already have. It would just be creating a new fee and a new mandate that all of these hemp products, are held to the same standards as traditional cannabis products, and then charge the $50 fee for registration.
Do we have a definition for what a trace amount of THC is?
There's a number of definitions around. Right. We would want to probably get industry input. I mean, I'm thinking like the people that are not converting CBD into Delta-9, but they're doing extraction, and it's just kind of, there's going to be trace amounts of THC in that. that that those all, because we've already in this state we banned this in the kind of the former.
Right.
So. Reduce or eliminate registration fees for medical patients. Just I know that there's some big changes in the medical program. Medical use endorsement is going to open up unprecedented access to higher quality, more affordable cannabis than at any time in the history of the medical program. Also, I just note for the legislature that last year they effectively reduced the administrative burden and the fee by a third by extending the expiration date of medical cards from 1 to 3 years. These are consequential, but we still hear that medical patients are reporting financial and practical barriers to remaining in the program. So I just suggest the legislature could consider eliminating registration fees for patients with certain qualifying conditions, or create a need-based waiver process, or just eliminate them altogether. Eliminating them altogether would cost around $50,000. I mean, an alternative, I don't want to get too nuanced here because like I think they understand, but like we could just say for people with lifelong qualifying conditions that they pay the initial fee and they never have to pay. Their card is just good for the rest of their lives. They don't have to renew. But I think, you know, just opening the door to it here, we can have that conversation. Consideration 8, direct to consumer allowances. I mean, you guys know we've been hearing about the need or the challenges that not having a direct to consumer allowance poses to small cultivators, you know, with respect to market access, profitability, branding opportunities. I just note also that, you know, as the market kind of matures over time, some of the business-to-business relationships become increasingly entrenched, and we're seeing retailers start to vertically integrate, which further kind of reduces shelf space for new people. So, you know, the cultivators through the Growers Association and others have been asking us in the legislature to create a direct-to-consumer allowance for, I mean, ever since our very first meeting, ever since before the bill was passed. You know, we've always said this is a reasonable request. We've submitted legislative reports that say the General Assembly should consider this thoroughly. Again, this direct-to-consumer has many different forms. It's not always clear what is meant by direct-to-consumer. There's a lot of different ways it could play out. And depending on how it plays out, there could be implementation challenges at the board. I note that nothing in current law prohibits a cultivator or a collective of cultivators from possessing a retail license and going direct to consumer. You know, I mentioned that this option is often cited as prohibitively expensive, not necessarily because of the fee, but the fee is part of it, but because of the regulatory compliance cost. But I also note that that's kind of an important consideration because you know, I really feel like we, more than most states, narrowly tailored our retail regulations to target specific risks that are involved in, you know, possessing and selling this, you know, Schedule I substance. So point of sale tracking systems with seed to sale integration are necessary to avoid diversion and ensure sales are taxed and auditable. Enhanced security requirements and cash management requirements are necessary to avoid undue public safety risks in a cash dominant industry. You know, just, you know, the general liability, costly insurance policies are necessary for public facing businesses that are inviting kind of people from the public into their premises. Often retailers need to hire additional employees to effectively manage customers, inventory, age verification. All of these together are quite expensive, but they all serve, you know, foundational components of a well-regulated cannabis market. If the legislature were to create a direct-to-consumer allowance for all cultivators, it would probably want to, at the same time, scale back some of these requirements and just accept the risk that they're not going to kind of, maybe capture every regulated sale, or that there's going to be some issues with some of these areas. Other practical concerns, is really just how much oversight does the legislature expect if we kind of jump from having 110 retailers to a potential universe of, if you add, potentially 390 more retail spots. Usually, states like to maintain a number of licensees to staff ratio to make sure that the market is well regulated. So this would, if they expect us to kind of hold every direct consumer sale to the same regulatory requirements as a traditional retail sale, probably requires additional staff at the board. And I also just note that they should probably directly address whether direct consumer sales may occur in the 200 or 180 or so towns that have not opted in to retail sales, or locations, cultivation locations that are within 500 feet of a school.
That's a different part of law, though, right?
I think they would want to address it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'd have to clarify for sure.
Right. In kind of densely packed residentially zoned neighborhoods, or really any neighborhood that's not zoned for retail, or in areas of kind of existing retail density. This sentence kind of tips our hand, not really, but it says these are not insurmountable and the benefits to small local farmers may outweigh the risks. Are we okay with that sentiment?
Yes.
Okay.
Are there did you want to put specific thoughts in here about what that could look like, or do you want to leave that for a later?
I suggested an intermediary step would be to create a pilot program for limited events. I mean, that was our whole that was our whole pitch last year, is that a limited event that includes direct sales from farmers to customers in a controlled setting that the CCB could administer, would allow us to develop those scale appropriate regulations that could maybe apply to a broader slate of
a bridge.
Yeah.
Would a co-op or a CSA style also fit within that?
I do mention that a collective of cultivators could get a retail license. I mean, I know we're not issuing new ones, but I think
that like you said, direct sales. We've heard lots of different pitches. We've heard lots of different concepts. I think CSA,
Yeah.
styles
The thing about a co-op is that when we do affiliations, we often ask about, are you sharing employees? Are you sharing equipment? A co-op would do exactly that. So we would have to address it separately if that was the model we were gonna, if that's a pathway for small cultivators.
I can add a co-op license in here. I'm not sure how much detail we need to provide here, but I could say
If we don't, if that's what I mean. Like if it's not for this conversation, that's fine. But if when we say that small cultivators can get together and have a retail license, part of what we would be looking at is how they're all affiliated with each other. So we have to address that.
Right. That's it. I mean, I'm sure that I'm missing other license fee considerations here, but I feel like this report is already pretty long, and
but we haven't gotten to the fun stuff yet.
Yeah, and so the next section, Kyle, is yours. But are we okay to kind of close out the first section, or the things we want to add?
Don't you want to talk some more? No,
no, please, God, no. Yeah, okay.
I'll try and make it quick.
Okay. Do you want
to? You can. Sure.
She told you all you didn't have to sit here this whole time.
Yeah, you guys can leave for this part of the conversation, but we're almost done.
So the fee report, or a conversation about fees, was the first part of this report. The second part was how the Cannabis Business Development Fund should be looked at moving forward, whether it was from an allocation or perspective, or from an access perspective. I think you talked a little bit about this, so I'm not going to harp too much on this, but the Cannabis Business Development Fund at this point, has been comprised of 3 one-time general general fund transfers of about $500,000 and a private contribution of $57,500. So we, through conversation, all the methodologies that you explained earlier, Pepper, we took a look at the Cannabis Business Development Fund as it is, had conversations with ACCD, tried to maintain and preserve their current legislative charge, which was to help social equity businesses. But how could we look beyond what and how they structure, whether it's conversations with consultants, Rhodes Consulting, or direct payments? What are some other considerations if this fund were to receive a more permanent allocation or a pilot 2-year allocation? What are some other opportunities for folks to access this fund? And I want to couch the conversation in it's a tight budget year across the entire state, considering what's going on at the federal level, and just simply because the issues that are relevant to all Vermonters, not just cannabis, oriented Vermonters. There's a lot of attention being paid to I don't have to explain this to anybody that's listening, but there's a lot of things that are going on, and where do we fit into the conversation, trying to request an allocation that's going to take away from some of the revenue that's been generated that everybody has earmarked, whether or not we like it or not, right? So I think one of the things that we were really attempting to do is in previous years we've said, hey, we need this much money. This much money is what we think we need. And we didn't, honestly have a lot of thought behind how that money would be best utilized and who would have access to that money. So I think one of the things that we've been thinking about is opening up the Cannabis Business Development Fund after social equity folks. And there's recommendations here that social equity folks would be, it doesn't matter if you're tier 1 or a retailer or a wholesaler, if your social equity status, you still would be able to jump through some of these recommendations and use this fund in a way that we're trying to re-envision it. But after social equity folks, which again, ACCD is very protective of their current legislative charge, which is to help social equity folks. Who else stands to gain the most from access to this fund? Who, considering license type, considering market access, like who really needs the support, parameters to kind of help incubate and accelerate their business moving forward. We kind of circled the drain on tier 1 cultivators broadly, tier 1 manufacturers, and then economic empowerment licensees. Julie, I don't know if briefly you want to talk about anything related to economic empowerment licensees. I know you've had some conversations around that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a category of licensing that we developed that the only benefit was in the very beginning in terms of like categorizing people to get them through the licensing process. But then it really had no other benefits. But, we have seen some past data about, people in that category leaving the market and citing the operational costs and not having access to coaching and things like that. So, I think there's an avenue here to expand, as we've talked about, some of the benefits that are available.
And I think if you Venn diagram out social equity licensees, economic licensees, tier 1 licensees, tier 1 manufacturer, there's a lot of overlap that hits at a large percentage of the smaller players in our market and how they can utilize this. So the first, there's a lot of recommendations that have kind of been couched into 4 main buckets. The first one is testing and compliance release. So if we're asking for a $1 million annual allocation to the Cannabis Business Development Fund, and again, how realistic is that this year? I hope the conversations kind of carry forward. I've also considered a 2-year pilot program that kind of would, take $1 million each year, but not extend it beyond that. And then we could write another report to say how effective it was. But really, it's really hard, I think, to do that from a practical perspective and have your business feel the real impacts of some of this in that short amount of time. So I think right now, what I think is the best is to just go for 1 million annually, and we can continue to update folks to understand feasibility. I don't think it's a secret here that testing and compliance costs are the single largest operational burden for all folks, most likely, but especially our tier 1 and social equity cultivators. Batch testing, insurance, packaging, so on and so forth. A single failed test can erase an entire harvest, pushing compliant operators into insolvency. You know, we have our own lab coming online later this spring. I didn't put anything directly that, you know, this would be a voucher for service to utilize our lab or one of the private labs. It was more so introducing the availability to, you know, subsidize testing or provide testing assistance, if people don't like the word subsidize, to really help folks, you know, alleviate some of that testing burden.
I think one thing we heard was about access when we did the tours. Was about access to, and I always forget the name of it, the wholesaling system that everybody uses.
Apex.
Yeah.
That's covered in the bottom.
Okay.
The second big bucket is business advising and coaching. And I think really this could, you know, I think, yeah, I hear a lot, you know, I'm coming from the ag world. Like, I just want to be out in my garden or on my farm. I don't want to have to deal with the paperwork. And I think we all, as humans, find solace in that in one way or another, whether it's cannabis or not. I'm really one to really push coaching and not consulting. I've said that time and time again, because then even if your business does fail, and a lot of small businesses fail, you are taking things that you have been coached on, you've learned, and taking it into your next endeavor, whether it's in cannabis or otherwise. But Vermont-based advisors leveraging current existing opportunities around the state, the Farm and Forest Viability Program, the Sustainable Jobs Fund, small business development centers. I've had conversations with all of them. There is interest. I think there's this hitting the dotted line and then 75 people calling them the next day. But I think those are operational things that we can really work through on the back end if we make it that far. But you know, I think focusing on business advising and coaching, maybe compliance is in there as well. I know the state college system is really trying to kind of lean into our regulations and understand how they can help people with compliance problems. But $250,000 would be allocated specifically for this. And what we can really do is distribute money. Farm and Forest Viability has a lot of great business coaching. Sustainable Jobs Fund does a really good job of accelerating businesses once they've found some success to kind of scale it appropriately. But they've all got networks of business advisors. And I've made the argument to a lot of these organizations that the problems in cannabis are not all too dissimilar from any other small ag business. You do not need to be a cannabis expert in every phrase of what a cannabis business expert is to help these folks. It's those same underlying foundational business, good business 101 things that I think a lot of folks need. The third big bucket would be business improvement and infrastructure grants. You know, we've all been talking to the Agency of Agriculture, which hosts the Working Lands Enterprise Board. I think one of the themes is not trying to reinvent the wheel about what Vermont does well and the type of support that Vermont typically affords its agriculture and commercial businesses. How can we leverage and bring dollars to a grant administration kind of board or organization to do some of that legwork in terms of administrative, you know, accepting applications and then doling out dollars. How can we leverage some of those existing infrastructures so we're not building a whole new division or agency from scratch, which would be way too expensive and timely for us to try and pull up. So those conversations with the Working Lands Enterprise Board are ongoing. We've had conversations with their legal counsel and with, you know, secretary, deputy secretaries on what it would take in order from a legislative tweak change to make sure that everybody's squared away. So, you know, I'm hopeful that, and you know, considering the conversations we've had, that will be a real option for folks.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Do any of these organizations, I know you've told us before what they, like the details of what they do, but do any of them do any kind of legal support? I'm just thinking about how many contracts there are in this industry and, you know, how investments seem to be shaping up and making sure.
I don't know that question off the top. I would imagine these organizations have been around the block once or twice and are savvy enough to have folks with legal background that they can connect folks to. You know, I know that the, you know, Vermont Law School, which we all, you know, have a role or past role at this point, you know, does a lot of work with the agriculture community as well. So, I view this as a jumping off point to kind of fine tune those kind of conversations. But $10,000 to $30,000 individual grants, it's really about business improvement. We've heard through tours that somebody just wants to build a new well. Those are $20,000 to $25,000 to build a new well. They're watering a tier 3 grow off of their personal well in a dry season like this, depending on where you are in the state. That's risky in some ways, right? So but there's no opportunities, for a cannabis business to receive any match funding or any funding. That's a big expense for any business to take on. So things like that, but also, there are other great things that the Working Lands Enterprise Board does do from a business improvement. Maybe you need a new piece of machinery. Maybe you need this new technology to kind of better your business over the next 3 to 5 years. So that's the third bucket. The last bucket is market access and public education, about $150,000. We hear a lot about small cultivators that feel this kind of existential threat from those that have been fortunate enough from an investment perspective to vertically integrate themselves. I think one of the things, and outdoor growers certainly are always trying to tell their story in a way that puts them on a level playing field with our indoor community. I think something like this, we could really, put out a bid or utilize the, ACCB's tourism and marketing division to kind of really, put out a marketing or a public education campaign on the benefits of sun-grown cannabis. How can we make sure that consumers, before they even get to an establishment, have an understanding of what their options are from outdoor versus indoor, so on and so forth. This funding could also, sponsor, I know there's organizations out there that do a lot of industry networking, matchmaking events, where can we help leverage, how intensely attended they are, or so on and so forth, buyer producer matchmake events or supportive technology to kind of, leverage your ability, if it's overly burdensome or costly, to invest in some of the technology that does some of that matchmaking for you. Could we offset some of those costs? Just some ideas. Could we pilot voluntary retail shelf space incentives with some of these dollars to kind of get different smaller producer options into some of our retail stores, trying to understand what might incentivize the retail community to do so, and then contract literacy workshops, which it kind of lends itself a little bit to what you were referring to, Julie. How can we help develop standardized agreements to protect small producers who might feel like their back's against the wall and they just need to move product and they don't want to feel like they've entered into a predatory negotiation? Not to insinuate that anybody is doing anything that would trigger that, but how can you gain confidence walking into a room or a store and trying to sell your product? These would all be coordinated through these support networks that we've talked about. And I certainly think that on the whole, if we think about this $1 million and the amount of opportunity that's there, coupled with some of the recommendations previously in the report, it could help kind of level set foundation for our smallest, most vulnerable operators as we look at the ever-changing landscape of federal cannabis, whether it's eliminating a parallel market like what's attempted to be done in hemp, or creating new opportunities through interstate commerce, or a New England compact where you can do X, Y, and Z. But how can you prep yourself, provide a foundation now while looking 3 years down the road, future casting 3 years down the road, but also trying to position yourself to kind of have a premium product when federal legalization ever does go. I think it'll happen at some point, God knows when, but if we get to that point, Vermont has always competed on quality, not quantity, from an agricultural perspective. And the opportunity to do all of this in every other ag and commercial space besides cannabis has helped so many Vermont brands extend their reach up and down the East Coast and beyond. So I think if you think about that, it's a modest ask, but again, I want to couch it in reality of where money is going to be hard to come by and find an earmark in this legislative session. But, I think this is as best a foot forward as we could possibly get to at this point in time.
That's great. Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, it's only a large amount of money compared to what they've done historically. It's not a large amount of money compared to how the state supports economic development for other industries.
I think there was $138 million in taxable sales last year in cannabis. But hey, I think we would just want to be mindful as we kind of work to getting to that appropriation.
Thanks for doing that. It's great. Just as a time check, we got to do the last part of the report. But do you need to pick up?
No, I got Kate picking up Finn.
Okay.
So I figured it was going.
Okay.
I'm going to be brief anyway.
Okay.
Although I don't know that that's helpful. No, I need your laptop because this isn't.
If you need the charger, there's an extra one over
Are you
there.
dying? Oh, yeah. There's one under here too.
Okay. You guys may want
That's
to.
fine for there. Don't let me forget.
Yeah, there's
This one's mine.
this one too. Okay, there's an extra.
We have different types. We got USB-C and we got all of them. So.
See?
So this is very, very similar to what we did last year. Last year, the legislature asked us to work with a working group, and they specified who that was, and that's included here in this first paragraph, to come up with a recommendation around excise tax revenue excise tax revenue should go towards the LAOB as a method of community reinvestment. So I talked with the LAOB. We looked back at the work last year. There was really no need to redo the work that was done last year. So this recommendation really is reflective of that, with some more current information about what the LAOB does and how they would use the funding and its importance in sort of like the current, the current climate and how things are going right now. So this here is what they would anticipate that they would use these funds for. Very similar to what we talked about last year, but to put an even finer point on it, connecting it back to the Sunrise report that the LAOB created back in 2020. Actually, I'm not sure if it was 2023 or 2024, so I apologize, Pepper, if that's wrong. But their recommendation number 4 in that Sunrise report was to, it was specifically related to technical assistance and or organizational support for grants to entities providing technical assistance related to obtaining land and access to housing. And so with in discussions with them and their administrative team, there's a rationale here for the importance of community reinvestment in housing as a method for stabilizing communities, as a public health intervention measure. And just, I think I don't need to hammer the point home that housing, of course, is, one of the state's most important priorities. And they are one of the many groups that are working very hard on that and could use funding to work directly towards some of those goals. And then this is really just supporting rationale.
Yeah. Great. All right. Well, so this is one of those reports that I think we should probably vote on to submit to the legislature, just so everyone's aware. I did, so that we could preview it at this meeting, ask for an extension. It was due 2 days ago, but all of the committee chairs were fine with giving us till the end of the day today to submit it. Are there any, after walking through it, are there any changes we'd like to make?
No. What is the actual title that we have for this report?
I forget what 12A called this report, but I will make sure. I've got like a cover page that I'm going to include here before the table conference. So, okay.
I'll tell you about that after.
Okay. I mean, one thing that I thought that we may want to include, but I think we can just do it anyway, is a Why Buy Legal campaign.
Yeah.
It's like different than the Sungrown. It's really just like, let's test a bunch of illicit market products and publish the results and try and generate some media interest in it, or maybe have a coordinated kind of campaign as to why regulated cannabis is a better alternative to the illicit market.
It'd be great to use some help.
Yeah.
California did a nice job with theirs that I
Yeah.
think that we could probably scale down to our size.
Yeah. I don't want to like interfere with any of the dollar amounts or anything, but I could just add it in that section about the public education campaign. Okay.
I don't think
Our lab needs to be fully
operational for that first. Yeah. So before we vote on this, I did want to open up for public comment for any kind of thoughts from the people that are watching. So either focus public comment on this report or any of the other kind of action items on our agenda, medical product branding, product displays at events, or direct mailing. So looks like Andy, if you want to go first.
Thank you. Sorry, just trying to find my document. Very interesting conversation. Thank you. And thank you very much for the why buy legal cannabis idea. I think that's terrific. And I know I'd also mentioned it in another meeting. A couple of things. Looking at fees in other states, which are vastly larger markets, I think we should be really careful about that. As far as putting higher fees on retail to help other parts of the market, that just doesn't seem to make sense to us, especially when in the same meeting and in the same report, we talk about how expensive and difficult it is to be a retailer. And then combine with that to have this, to even suggest a pilot program for direct sales to customers when we already have too many retailers. That's a retail sale. That just exacerbates an existing issue that everybody knows is an issue. We could show you by our sales. So I don't understand this take from one to help another, but the taking is already, when there's already an issue that, I'm sorry to repeat myself, just gets further exacerbated. You know, and this, you know, brand, we need this to be able to, for cultivators, for brand recognition. People buy stuff in our store by brand. When we don't have one thing, we talk about the other that we do. Yeah, there are strains also, but we're a merit-based system. You can come to our store. If you have a high-quality product that we know by testing and you share our values, you can get on our shelves, and then it's up to the customers. I think that the board is unfortunately listening too much to loud or many voices and then ignoring that it would actually be hurting others, the retailers that are already hurting. And then last, the retailers, we're not all equal. We can't handle already, those of us that are small like us, rural like us, can't already handle the fees. And just having to pay it even before you're even approved is a problem. And I think that we should have a fee based on a sliding scale of sales. And I think that with all these, if you want more money, we need to be able to sell more cannabis. The legislature needs to go beyond the 1 ounce to match what's going on around us. And the CCB, please needs to retract its current limits and go back to the original ones. Thank you for the opportunity to say anything. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for those points, Sandy. Dave?
On the 2-year registration discussion, you know, hearing you guys talk about it, sometimes I get like a little bit confused because I think about it maybe a little bit differently than you. You guys talk a lot about like the registration and the testing and the shelf stability. But, you know, in my world, within a year of a product being registered, multiple batches are made, and we don't register each batch of that product. Whether that batch is flower, it's of the same strain that is done multiple times a year by an indoor grower, or a gummy that is made, you know, one batch and then it sells and you make another. And so, I mean, I just kind of, I find it a little odd to worry about the 2-year registration fee exceeding the shelf stability of the product. Those are two very different things to me. It's sort of like, the registration is a registration so that you know what the product is and you can put it through the track and trace with a P number. And then its shelf stability is dealt with through your rules about having a best by date on that when it's a product that has best by date, or for flower by having both now the harvest date and the packed on date on the label. So I want to just urge you guys to separate those two concepts, because really the product registration is just this like speed bump on the way to market. And if you were to have the product registration last longer, even if you charged the same per year, you'd reduce administrative burden on both sides of the equation by requiring your compliance team, your product team, to look at things less often, and requiring us to wait 3 weeks less often for approval, so that we can get our products to market faster and just keep them on market. So that's what I got on product reg. You're going to talk about medical branding soon. I know we've talked a lot about free speech rights of cannabis businesses, and I know that we have some disagreement about that. But I just want to remind you that product branding also is expression that is protected by Article 13 of the Vermont Constitution. And you ought to, when you think about what it is that you're doing to restrict branding of products, that you think about what it is that you believe Article 13 requires. I'm not trying to argue with you again about what Article 13 requires, but whatever it is that you think Article 13 requires, it does apply here as well. And so whatever standard it is that you guys think does apply, you got to apply it here as well. And you need to respect our constitutional rights. I know there's going to be a lot of discussion now about direct sales. And, look, a lot has been said. There's never going to be agreement across the entire industry about direct sales. I'm not looking to pile on. I just want to reiterate, there has been a 25%, roughly 25% drop in the sales per store across this state in the last year. That was driven by the roughly 40% increase in the number of stores that rolled out all within, about a 4 or 5 month period last fall, winter. And this market has not recovered from that. And it's going to take more time for the market to recover from that. And I think that if we were to expand the retail footprint in any way, whether that's allowing more stores to open or allowing different alternative to stores, that is going to have a continued negative impact on the retail side of this market. And that's just something that is a fact and needs to be in the mindset as you think about where to go with policy. And so if you think that retail applications need to be closed, it's hard to understand how you can simultaneously think that we need to allow sales to occur outside of retail as well. And if you value a stable retail market, then you need to act in that way. So I'll leave it at that. And I know there are people who disagree, and I respect their opinions too. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. Cloud9 there.
Hey, how's it going? It's David Camara with Cloud9 here in Fairhaven. I kind of just had a little bit of like a 2-part question answer. So when you guys are saying like the 15-mile rule, are you guys saying that a shop must move out of their 15-mile radius if they want to move? I guess that would be like my first question of the 2 questions that I have for you.
Talked about.
Sorry, this isn't really a question and answer section. This is a public comment for the kind of topics that we have on the agenda. Okay. But 15 miles was one data point that we wanted to look at just as one kind of example of what retail density, how it may impact a region of the state, not just a specific municipality.
Okay, I gotcha. I guess my second part to that would be, so Be Well, you guys accepted to move to the town of Poultney. That now puts 3 retail locations within 5.7 miles of each other. That also doesn't put Be Well outside of, like, they didn't even move more than 15 miles. So I just don't necessarily myself see how that helps the market unless they are to be moving out of that 15-mile radius. And furthermore, there's now 3 locations within 5.7 miles. That's really all I have to say on that part.
Okay. Anyone else for a public comment on this report or anything else? Okay, I'll close the public comment window. So I think, you know, I understand what Andy and Dave are saying about this report specifically, but these are really just considerations for the legislature, and whether we raise them in the report or not, they're going to be considered by them because these issues have been coming up year over year. And I think the thing that we want to do is just give them some things to consider and not just kind of in the, you know, when they're not quite so busy, when about the board's perspective on them. I do take Andy's point that the, you know, our, I have some comps about fee prices for retail locations in the New England states. And I take her point that those are all probably larger markets that have more potential customers than Vermont. So maybe we shouldn't recommend the fee increases to the retailers, or at least note that, you know, in the fee report that, by the way, like, while this might not be totally out of line with other New England states, this is a smaller market.
Yeah, I think, yes, I think we should do that.
Okay.
And I think I didn't look closely at how some of the recommendations were worded, but where in your section that you go a step further and talk about the different avenues that the legislature could take, making it clear that we hear that from various different avenues of the market, you know, particularly just because otherwise it becomes our recommendation as if we've asked for it. And that's not necessarily true. We're just really conveying what we're hearing as all the different challenges. So I don't know if there's a way to wordsmith it, but
we could couch it as, like, as you said, it's a consideration, it's an option. If we're gonna propose cutting fees somewhere, there's gonna be another place that the people who sit at the State House are gonna look to find that revenue, right? So even couching this as an option versus the only option, right, you know, helps. You know, we could sit and think about a couple other options too. Yeah. You know what I mean? But it's an option. I think the biggest onus was on tier 4 and 5 indoor cultivators, not necessarily on the retail community. Yeah. But point taken.
Yeah. On the testing and product registration, I mean, those issues are somewhat decoupled already. I mean, what happens is people, when they have mid-cycle batches, they upload the new testing results. They don't do it to product registration. They just do it to their inventory tracking. But the effect is the same, which is that every product is either going to be tested at least once a year, or it's going to be tested multiple times a year, every product on the shelf. So I understand his point, or Dave's point. We actually looked at just fully decoupling those two processes. Again, there's like money involved, so we could do it that way. I think this is what I highlighted is still relevant information.
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I'd like to get to a point where a product is tested, it has a best by date, and that those two things align.
Right.
Right. So however long something sits on the shelf, it's tested before it goes out on the shelf, and then that's it. It comes off the shelf once it passes its best by or expiration date.
And product registrations could be, yeah, if we had that in place, product registrations could be indefinite so long as the ingredients don't change, the form doesn't change, the packaging doesn't change, like you know, that. So, and the, you know, testing results are totally decoupled from that, but that's just not the system that was built. So all right, so and then I was going to add in a little bit about why buy legal to that section.
Yep.
with those changes and with that, or any other Scrivener errors that I'm correcting, are we okay to vote for this, to approve this
Yes.
report?
Yep. I move that the board endorse the substantive recommendations of the Act 5612A report, and that we authorize the chair to submit the report to the General Assembly with the understanding that the chair may make editorial and typographic corrections and updates.
Okay.
And I will second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. All right. Sorry for everyone that did not care about that report who had to sit through it. Let's see. Where is my agenda? So next on the agenda, medical products branding. Let me just, Gabe, do you want to tee this up? I'm happy to if you don't want to.
No, I'd be happy to give you the background. It just might take me a second to get to the right document, so I can do that. But while I fill dead air, I can say that there is a question for the board's discretion about the extent to which branding should be restricted on medical products. And forgive me, just be one more second while I get that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, our rule says that medical products need to include the warning label, and that there may be packaging, labeling of medical products must be black and white and must comply with other distinguishing characteristics set out in board guidance. And in guidance, we say that medical products must be free of branding.
This is medical only product.
These are medical only products.
Yes, these are medical only problems or products, and what the goal is obviously is to ensure that they're not confused with adult use products. And there's also the rationale that there should, rather than patient choice, or rather consumer choice based upon the attractiveness or appeal of the product, these are meant to be products that are taken in consultation with a healthcare provider and the advice of a healthcare provider based on a condition. But people have raised questions about the ambiguity about what the guidance means when it says no branding. Does that mean you can only write just plain type of the manufacturer? Does it mean the logo would be allowed in black and white, but no other stuff? How big could the logo then be? And I know some folks are asking whether they can use a DBA for their medical lines. There is quite a bit of precedent for restricting what a manufacturer can put on its packaging. For example, if you think about the entire prescription drug system, you don't know the name of any generic drug manufacturers off the top of your head because they don't advertise directly to you. They make what is meant to be an equivalent product. It's approved by FDA on the basis of its equivalence. Now, there's some disanalogy there between that and what's happening here because we're not an FDA. And so brand trust may be more relevant to the consumer here than it would be in the generic prescription drug system, for example. So it's really just a judgment call for you all. The most important thing I think is that people are looking to make investments in packaging and labeling. They want to know what the consistent policy will be and how these rules will be interpreted.
I'm trying to think back to our conversation around our debate on this topic. And I think it really was that we wanted these medical only products to be visually distinguishable from an adult use product. So there was no confusion either at the point of retail sale where you have, inventory for both. You're not selling medical products to non-medical patients by accident. I know that may be solved by, the M number versus the P number, but we wanted it to be physical segregation. They wanted to look different, and we didn't want them to be people buying them because of a marketing ploy as opposed to the need. But I don't know. That's why I remember we did this the way we did
I feel
it.
like we maybe talked about black and white logos.
Right.
And I don't have an issue with a black and white logo. I mean, I think that packaging rules already, prohibit making any kind of medical claim, right? So, but I just don't have an issue with a small. Right. I was trying to look at ASTM's earlier to see what their like size of logo stuff is, and I could not find it. But we could limit the size of the logo so that it's not that it doesn't appear to be branding the same way that like another package on a shelf might want to stand out.
Yeah. And I could see both from a DBA perspective for specific lines. I see like both sides of the equation. Like if you have a specific line for medical only products, that makes it easier to not mistake that product for an adult use product. The flip side is, you're creating an intentional marketing, whatever, around the medical product. But I really don't have a problem with it.
I mean, folks are already creating products under DBAs now, right? I mean, yeah.
Okay. But they can't use it wouldn't be illegal under our current laws to have a DBA that purports a therapeutic.
Right,
use.
that would be the limit.
Yeah, the claims are different to me, but if you want to create a specific line, if you're a manufacturer and you're trying to create products for the medical only space and you want to create a line that's separate from your adult use products, like that could be viewed as a marketing thing. But the flip side, it might be easier to distinguish those products as
Right,
medical
it
only
meets the
products.
original goal, right?
Sure,
which is
so I
to
don't
make
have
them
a problem
distinguish.
with it so long as it's not so egregious. But again, that's this gray area that I think people are trying to figure out.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think just the Secretary of State, of course, doesn't inquire into whether or not your DBA meets other requirements. And so I think we would probably want people to be careful as they did that. The a little known or little observed detail of our medical prohibit therapeutic claims. The concept there is that the care provider is meant to be making those claims and making those recommendations. So that's a good thing, I think, to bear in mind. I wouldn't want anybody to waste time and money getting a DBA that's directly therapeutic sounding, because it could be a problem later.
Yeah, I'm agnostic to what the actual DBA is. I understand it in theory or in context, right? There are going to be specific instances where what you choose to do business as, kind of like the organic thing feels relevant, right? If you're called Vermont, or there's probably a business called that. If you're called so-and-so organic, like you're not technically legally organic as USDA has determined that you can be, but you still might possess those characteristics. I don't know. But anyways, everybody's getting a little brain dead at this point. So,
yeah. So yes to black and white logos.
Yeah.
Yes to DBAs that are medical specific. Slogans.
No.
No to slogans and claims, health claims.
Also no.
Already illegal.
That's already enough.
Okay.
You may want to consider like a ratio, no more than 1/5 or 1/6 of the total space or something.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to look for.
Okay.
And I couldn't find it.
1/5.
Do we have a regulation on how large our
font needs to be?
The warning symbol needs to be? I feel like I should just know that, but
It's got to be in 11 type font, Times New Roman.
no, the
symbol. Oh.
1/5 is fine. Well, it's not.
Okay.
That's not.
You're more familiar with
that's not
ASTM
that
than I
crazy.
am.
I know,
so
but
if you wanna-
it's when you're looking at there. There's a lot of information in there. I couldn't find, but 1/5 is fine, I think.
Okay. So black and white logos that aren't taking up the whole package. Is that good enough? Yep.
We'll
Till next month.
take it. Yes, we'll work
Okay.
with the team and see what folks do.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Moving on. Product displays at events. So this, came up last year with the NECAN specifically, but it probably will repeat itself depending on what we do at other events. So the reason why we said no to products at events last or I guess it was earlier this year, is because of Rule 2.2.7 specifically, which says that you can only transport cannabis between licensed cannabis establishments. So NECAN is not a licensed cannabis establishment. So we couldn't have a bunch of people bringing who knows how much cannabis to that event. But we could make a waiver. We could make it just for NECAN and then just consider them on a case by case basis. But I think, there's, for consistency, we should probably just kind of think through, are we okay with certain allowances for these types of events?
I think for NECAN for now, sure. But I think as we understand and unpack what legislative ideas and concepts and new license types are floated through the legislature this year, it makes sense to think about it. I don't want to say you can't technically have a cannabis. It gets complicated, right? In terms of what an event is, you know what I mean? So I think I'm for trying to get to yes on product displays at NECAN.
Okay.
I think 2.2.7, is that what it was? Says that cannabis can only be, or its equivalent can only be taken to the next part in the supply chain unless it's for a retail sale.
Right.
I'm paraphrasing.
Right. Yeah.
I think we can create some allowances that would allow folks to transport. And again, I have questions that I would like the community to provide us feedback on. What I really wanted to do today is tee up questions that I think could be helpful for us to get to yes, to talk about more further in December.
Okay.
And kind of hold a conversation. I don't know if we need to vote on something like this, but to make sure we're all okay with getting to yes. I think we can solve the chain of custody concerns from how the product is transferred through our system. But there's questions about what happens at NECAN, right? How much is it? Let's say I'm going to make up numbers. Let's say you can have 7 strains. How much per strain should we couch it around, 4 grams for 7 strains and kind of get it closer to an ounce, per license, per person, per table. I don't know if there's hired security to watch these spaces overnight at NECAN because it's a 2-day event. What happens to the product at night? What happens if I'm by myself at a booth and I have to go to the bathroom, or I want to attend a talk, or I want to walk around? Is it unattended? Is it in a sniffer? Is it in a glass? I think those are questions that I would like more answers on to get to yes. I've had preliminary conversations with some that have been interested in the space, but I don't think I've seen community engagement on what that would look like. So I'm hopeful, and I don't know necessarily the best way that we go about this. We can pose questions. We're posing questions now. Do we need to pose them more formally somewhere to get responses on? Can everybody who's interested just email kyle.harris@vermont.gov and I will collect what you're thinking around these kind of questions? I think when it comes to the total amount, and if we're thinking about strains, and how it's packaged, I'd love for this to be a collaborative process versus, how folks think we operate these days.
I mean, I think there'd have to be parameters because this isn't for sale, right? And you can't give it away. So, and I think
and it spans multiple days.
And I think at one point there was talk about how it would work in inventory tracking. So theoretically, whatever you say that you're bringing to, an event for display should also go back into inventory, or it should be the same when it leaves and when it goes back to its original source point. It seems like it would be a small amount.
I think it would be. I think overall, I want to say yes. I just want to.
I would need to talk to the team because I do not think right now there is a system outside of tracking those as loss.
Yeah.
So I would say I will try to get that information from our compliance team.
And that's why I wanted to tee it up today to talk about, knowing that we couldn't get to yes today, and hopefully by December, whether it's our internal conversations that need to happen or community input on how this would likely look at a booth and what concerns, we have around that product that's technically not for sale. And I've been any can before there was a legal market. And, you know, I'm not an idiot, right? So like things happen, you know, so.
It seems like I'm laughing because I'm surprised that you, no, you're not an idiot. You're not.
Oh, well, some people think so.
It's funny. I think the first question is whether or not this is something that we can manage from a compliance perspective. Because if we do it right and something goes horribly wrong, then we are going to have to answer to the legislature, and it might make it more difficult to do farmers markets or the other things that I think people are going to start talking about.
Yeah,
but it is a good way to start thinking about issues ahead of, like I said, what's likely going to be talked about at the legislature this year around events, around catering, around whatever, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so sounds to me like you're the furthest down this rabbit hole. I mean, are you willing to work with Mike DiTomaso?
Sure.
And anyone else in the industry that you think might care about this issue, and have kind of like a basic framework for?
I'm happy to take the helm and present whether or not we think it's feasible at the next meeting and give you my honest assessment on whether or not I got to yes.
Yeah, one issue we really want to deal with too is whether is it Essex where Nikan, the Champlain Valley Expo, whether they're okay with this.
Yeah, no, we heard from Eli before. I think we can. I'll continue. I've had conversations around this issue over the last couple weeks, months, you know, and I'll continue those, and we'll put it on the agenda for the December meeting.
But Julie, you're okay with the threshold. I think it's important for the industry to get some indication that all three of us are okay conceptually with the idea.
Oh yeah, yes, I'm okay conceptually. I just think we need to figure out how to do it in such a way that protects the industry.
Yep. Okay.
And yeah.
Okay, so then all three board members are conceptually okay with this, subject to kind of what the final form and details look like. So it'll likely happen, but we just need to make sure that we're not creating undue public safety risks.
And adding that to the next month.
And adding it to the agenda for next month. Okay. And be in touch with Kyle if you're listening and are interested in displaying cannabis at Nikan. Okay. Audience composition requirements for direct mail advertising. Gabe, can you walk us through this? This is one that came through the staff.
Yes, this was a request of the advertising committee. To date, nobody has been approved for direct mail. The general principle, as you know, is that the audience composition in the general population is not met. You have to have a specific showing that your target population is disproportionately people who are of age to consume cannabis. Direct mail flyers, I think, are pretty clearly out because there's no control over who sees what. Often children come home from school first, pick up the mail, etc. However, we have I think an applicant or not an applicant, somebody had asked to have audience composition approval for a particular direct mail that would be targeted, they say, based on data, to adults over 21. And so I think the question becomes, are you comfortable with, we don't have all the data from them yet, but is it even possible in the context of a mailing where you're not putting it in somebody's hand, you're just tossing it into the mail, to approve as compliant with the audience composition requirement for advertising, sealed envelope advertising targeted by a competent direct mail targeting company to adults over 21 or households without children. Obviously, like any of those targetings, there's going to be error, and like any of the showings of audience composition compliance, the committee requires some insight into how the numbers are arrived at, but they don't just take just so numbers. They require that regardless of the context, there be a serious effort to validate the numbers that are offered to it, rather than just saying, well, we think. So that's really the question for you. To date, the only mailings that have gone out have been in violation of rule and have been in violation of the advertising rules and statutes, and one of them just resulted in a significant fine. But that's it.
So this doesn't even really seem to me to be a departure from any other kind of advertisement. It's really, we need to know explicitly how these people, just if it was for like a targeted internet banner, how you're ensuring that you're meeting the audience composition.
It's a little more, so this would be, you know, a licensee sending it directly to someone's home, right? So we allow people to be forgotten by their retailer, for example, if they don't want to receive marketing information. That would not be an option here, right?
We control the information nominally control the information that a retailer can collect about its customers, but we don't have any control over the information a third-party targeter
so they
can get from data brokers, etc.
Okay. So then it's not different.
This request came from one of those direct market mailers, not our licensee.
I believe so, yeah. It may be a combination of them, but I know Patrick had heard directly from the company doing the targeting. And I think, you know, if the message from the board members is stay the course, we would probably apply the same principles that were applied to targeted web advertising and inquire into how did you validate this, you know, are the numbers that you're offering reliable and credible?
And maybe I'm asking the wrong question. I'm thinking about how this would show up at your doorstep. Like, would this be in like a sealed envelope, like a credit card offer, or like one of those glossy, has pictures on it that has your address and your name on it where anybody can see it, the mailer can see it? Like,
that's one of the reasons this is before you today. I think because there's no control over who sees in-process flyers, right? They go all over the place. It makes a lot of sense to me to recommend to you thinking of just a ground rule that it's got to be a sealed envelope addressed to a known adult.
Yeah.
Not current resident, not right.
That seems like a smart principle, because if your data gets old, you're no longer doing the thing. But yeah, I mean, in concept, you could go for a flyer, but it invites.
I was just wondering if they had provided any information that made it that pointed in one direction or another, or were they just kind of info fishing?
They're ready to provide that information, but they haven't yet. So if you guys feel comfortable with this moving in a particular way, I think what we would do next is ask them to show us their methods and show us their validation.
So we'd still have to clear that hurdle.
Yes, but before that we even get into that, we make them produce that stuff. We wanted to kind of ask you, what do you think about flyer versus seal? What, you know, are there guardrails around it that you think are appropriate to effectuate the intent of the General Assembly?
Sealed and addressed to someone over 21, sorry.
Yes, in a house that can verify that it meets the audience composition.
That's great. Yeah.
Okay, that's all we need to know.
All right. And now we're going to the executive director report. Is that right?
We are. Anybody still awake?
Do
You are.
does anyone need a break?
No, let's do it.
Okay.
It's up to 4, and I will not.
I'm going to refill my water, and I will offer you as you continue. Does anybody need any? I think I'm good.
Then, did I not? Do I not? Oh my gosh, this is up. I was like, something's
I need
moving.
to come and rescue.
Yeah,
But I
I see
didn't-
that.
they
I
don't figure
see.
it out,
But
sorry.
you were ready to go and
I'm
have.
sorry.
Right. So here we are, our executive director report. I think we've talked quite a bit about our upcoming peer networking event that will take place tomorrow. So again, everybody is welcome to attend, and please do attend and participate on the topic fully. Moving on, our licensing data. So a quick snapshot of the active adult use licenses. 576 active licenses in November, which is 8 fewer than last month and also 8 fewer than a year ago. Again, we will continue to monitor our active licenses data closely for any anomalies, but right now we are seeing a steady sort of trickle down here.
Which is also just consistent with always. It's just we're not adding a ton of new ones every, yeah.
Those closed, license types and tiers definitely contribute to that. Another look at the active licenses. So here you're looking at 3 months worth of data by type. November numbers are represented in the brown color. So again, cultivators continue to outnumber other license types. You could see, if you look closer, a small reduction in the cultivator category by 5. Additional changes that we're seeing here, a small drop in manufacturers by 1 and 1 retailer, as well as 1 wholesaler. So that's what we are reporting. Next is our priority status slide. No changes here. Numbers are pretty steady. So I'll jump forward onto our cultivation data. That's a familiar slide to you all. As I said, we are reporting a net decrease of 5 cultivators month over month. It's reflected here as well. I think you can probably see all the totals, with indoor remaining the most common license type. At a quick count, our tiers 4 and 5 are currently at combined 10 if you put those together. So that's where we are at. And we'll move forward under another slide. Again, cultivated data here across 3 months now. So you could see gains and losses over time. Again, brown color is what you're looking for if you are trying to focus on our November data. We actually are reporting a gain of 1 license in the outdoor tier 1 category, as we had a mixed tier 1 renew as an outdoor. So that should help explain that. And then we had another tier 2 tearing down to a tier 1 to better match their operations. So those are just small little notes here to explain a few of the trends. But overall numbers continue to track with no unexpected or unusual anomalies. And next is our licensed canopy capacity square footage data. Again, pretty much following the trend. Total amount of licensed canopy is now 835,500, down very slightly compared to last month, only 13,500 square feet. And the gap between indoor and outdoor capacity continues to narrow, as you could see, months over months. So that's our canopy data. And one more slide here. This one is on relinquishments. So again, the chart on your left breaks down the last 3 months of relinquishments by priority status of the businesses. So if you look at that chart first, you'll see that we are reporting 9 total relinquishments, including 5 standard and 4 economic empowerment, no social equity. And then the chart on the right focuses on the types and tiers of licensees who relinquished over the same time period. Again, November data is the last little block. So again, a lot of information here, but majority of relinquishments, so 2 each, manufacturer tier 2, and a couple cultivation types also, each relinquished 2 licenses in November. So that's our licensing data. And now we'll jump into our compliance and enforcement data. Again, a lot of work here, 113 inspections shown in blue, and also 16 active investigations is what our compliance team has been busy with. Next, we'll take a look at just the summary of our investigative activities over the last 3 months. Again, brown color represents November data. And we are reporting 16 investigations across 3 license types here. In addition to this, I also wanted to mention that our compliance team conducted a full review of every licensed retailer's website to assess compliance with required age gating. And that follow-up work was initiated in response to last month's Dr. Vellant's presentation on public health impact of the cannabis retail market, which flagged some potential gaps in online compliance practices by licensees. So as a result of that review by the team, 10 retailers were found to have no age gating in place, and they will be receiving enforcement actions soon. And then there will be a broader targeted communication to the rest from our compliance team, giving them a brief window to self-correct less egregious violations covered during that investigative effort. So we'll report more on that. But again, we do appreciate Dr. Vellant's work, which has helped to inform some of our compliance initiatives, and the team's effort to dive right in and do all of that work. So again, that's just on top of the 16 active investigations mentioned here.
Thank you.
So that's that. Now we'll just focus on those 16 investigations. Again, the color we use here to help represent different license types under investigation. So red is for investigations involving retail, for example, orange manufacturers and green cultivation. Again, our advertising and product related investigations have been the main focus of our team this month. The rest here. And diving further into the other types of actions that our compliance team performed this month and actually over the last quarter. So complaint count for this month is 48, plus 4 letters of warning, 17 notices of violations, and 7 product destructions and 8 documented cessations of operations. So again, the busy months for sure. Touching on the complaints, here on this slide, you could see them broken down by specific subjects. Advertising leads the way with 12. We received and processed 12 complaints. And the other types are also listed here.
Those are complaints, not necessarily enforcement.
Yes, that's what we processed. Yep. We're not reporting any dismissed complaints, so at least at the first glance, they all require some additional work.
Okay.
So, yeah. Okay. And then letters of warning, 4 of those. So again, you could see what they focused, what the team issued, and with advertising violations being cited in 2 letters of warning. A couple others. And now notices of violation. So again, as you could probably tell, lots of work on notices of violation this month. And as you could see from this chart, the large portion of the recent NOVs fall within the inventory tracking category. What this reflects is several months of focused investigative work by our compliance team, including detailed desktop reviews of our licensees' inventory tracking and reporting. And so once those violations were identified and investigated, NOVs were issued as appropriate. And I'd like to take this opportunity to remind our community that inventory tracking is a mandatory requirement for all licensees, and that the board will continue to take these violations very seriously. So, yeah, that is our notices. Before we move on to the medical program, the last chart here is a quick look at the reasons reported as motivating considerations for our licensees to terminate their operations. This chart is based on 13 individual responses. So again, a business could have mentioned 3 reasons why, all captured here. So sort of if you were to step away from the percentages, market access at 31% represents 4, being cited was cited 4 times, and then banking, insurance, and profitability were mentioned 3 times. So that's where we're at on the compliance data for the months.
The labor issues is interesting.
What did was that a question? Oh, no.
It's hot in here, and I'm thinking out loud. It's interesting that I don't remember seeing labor issues be quite such a big part of the pie.
It probably is one of 2 responses.
Oh, okay.
Just because, like I said, it just seems like a lot, but it's based on 13 responses. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. All right. And now the medical program, the trend continues. So we are seeing that year over year, our caregiver count is now 110 to 129. So we are up, and our patients have pressed the 3,000 number.
When do you think the last time that was?
That's a good question. We could get that information
just before this.
Oh, yeah, I just have that.
What?
We've been in the program longer than the rest of us.
The highest was 52, 58.
It was 56.
Yeah, well, we can get that. I'll get that for you for the next. I'm sure Liz can.
Well, we
pull
just
that
seem
up.
to be steadily creeping back in that direction.
Yeah. Which again, I'm sure medical endorsement has something to do with that, as we've been.
It's also a 3-year thing, so we may see there may be people that have dropped out or aren't utilizing it, but we're enrolling new people.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can have a little update or prepare a little report for next board meeting on those trends.
Yeah, that would be good to start tracking to see if there's a change that's related to having more of those endorsements.
Yeah, or if folks are coming back, because we could probably give a little color, whether those are brand new folks or those who've exited the program and now are returning.
That would be amazing.
One thing that we want to do again, by the way, is do a patient satisfaction survey. I want to wait till after the medical use endorsement has been in effect for a little bit to see how that's impacted patients'
Do you want
lives.
to wait like a full year even?
You probably want to do I want to get one while we still have Dr. Klumpers under contract, just so she can help with questions. But yeah, I mean, we should probably just start making it a recurring thing.
Okay. All right, and now a quick look at the medical at the retailers with approved medical endorsements. So total 15 currently have been approved, and you could see where they're located across the state. All right, so that is all for the data, and now we are on to the staff recommendations. So our first slide here is our staff recommendation for initial licensure. Just one manufacturer tier 2 applicant here who already holds a tier 2 indoor cultivation license. And our staff recommends them for approval here.
Great. Is there a motion?
I move that the board adopt staff recommendations to approve the renewal of the listed license, subject to any contingencies.
And I'll second.
All in favor?
Before you vote, I should say I did that one. It's issuance of a first license.
Initial. Okay.
Oh, did I say
I apologize. No, I
sorry.
I created that confusion, but this is a new issuance. I just want to make sure.
Right. Sorry.
It's an initial license.
One's on me.
How do we go about correcting that motion?
Friendly amendment to correct it to a initial licensure.
Second.
I will second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, I have two slides of conventional license renewals that are recommended for approval here. This first slide looks like it has our cultivators and manufacturers. And I'll leave it here for you to take a look for a moment. And our next slide here, another slide with conventional renewals, as our retailers. Again, all businesses on this slide and the prior one are recommended by our staff for board approval.
All right. Any questions?
No.
Is there a motion to approve?
I move that the board adopt staff recommendations to approve the renewal of the licenses listed, subject to any usual contingencies.
And I would second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you again. Moving on. So here we have an applicant who wishes to change their location from Benson to Stannard as a part of their regular on-time renewal. The new site has received a passing inspection from our compliance team, and Stannard does not have an LLC. Our licensing recommends that this renewal be approved with the Stannard site as this manufacturer's new home.
Great. Is there a motion to approve the location change?
I move that the board approve the renewal with the amendment requested.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Moving on. So here we have a request for ownership change. It's a request to add a second principal. This request, again, is made coincident with a regular license renewal. And the licensing team has received necessary documentation to support the renewal and the request for ownership change. And approval is recommended here by the staff.
Is there a motion to approve with the ownership change?
I move that the board approve the renewal and ownership change listed.
And I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Another one here. So now you're looking at three businesses seeking to renew their licenses and also add a medical endorsement as a part of the renewal. And our licensing team recommends that the board approve issuances here. Again, the one quick reminder that enhanced training for patient-facing retail staff is required. Thus, there will be a slight delay before these new endorsees, if approved, will have staff with the training required to transact sales to medical patients. And these businesses, if approved, will also receive this as a written reminder from our licensing team.
So our first training on the 3rd is full, right?
Those folks, and Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, but those folks have been invited to join the training.
I believe that I know for a fact that at least one of them was. It is dependent on when they got their application in, if they were in the queue when we sent out those invites.
And the second one is the end of January.
End of January. Yeah, we have a little bit of flexibility there, but yes. Okay. Is there a motion to approve these renewals with the medical use endorsement?
I move that the board approve the 3 listed renewals, including the medical use endorsement for each.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. So next one. All right. So here we are looking at a business seeking to renew their license while also adding an additional principal and a medical endorsement. So again, all required documentation has been provided to the licensing team on time. Melissa, am I correct? Is that? Yeah, okay. Again, same warning around medical endorsement and the requirement that the training be completed before the business can begin operation.
Yep. Okay. Any questions about this?
No.
Is there a motion to approve?
I move that the board approve the listed renewal, including requested amendments and the additional addition of the medical use endorsement.
And I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, let's see what our next one is. Okay, so now here we have a business also that is also seeking to renew their license and also want to add a medical endorsement. The licensing team here recommends that the board approve the timely renewal of this application and also recommends that the board dismisses the licensee's request for a medical endorsement. The board has been shared on the licensing and compliance materials related to this licensee to support our staff recommendations. And of course, our staff is available for any questions about this licensee or this recommendation.
Does anyone have any questions for licensing or compliance about this one?
I wonder if it would be useful if we said what it was that we're discussing in terms of not renewing or not including the medical use endorsement. Like what wasn't responded to. I think that might be helpful.
Yeah, there are a couple we should give. Do you want to touch on their situation? Because I know it involves compliance both ends.
Sure, and I invite licensing to interrupt me if I say anything inaccurate, but the gist is your medical rule requires a demonstrated 6 months of careful and compliant record keeping, and prohibits the issuance of medical endorsements if there's an unresolved NOV. And in this case, there is an unresolved NOV related to record keeping and the use of the inventory tracking system.
Okay.
So it looks like, if you were to dismiss it today, the dismissal, I think, could be without prejudice to their opportunity to reapply at an appropriate time.
Okay. And I believe the application packet was also not complete for medical endorsement. Yeah.
Right. There were, sorry, I forgot that part. There were no SOPs for medical either. So even if those problems weren't there, we wouldn't be able to back to that.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion to renew without the medical or dismiss the medical endorsement application?
I recommend that the board approve the renewal, but dismiss the medical use endorsement without prejudice to reapplication within the appropriate time.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Moving on. Here is an establishment looking to amend their license mid-cycle to add a medical endorsement. Again, the licensing team recommends that the board approve issuance of the endorsed license with the same reminder that required enhanced training for patient-facing retail staff is still something that needs to be completed before the business can start operations.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve this amendment to add a medical use endorsement?
I move that the board approve issuance of the medical use endorsement requested.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you again. So here is another one. That's an executive amendment related to a change of ownership outside of the normal renewal period by a cultivator. The applicant had filed for an executive amendment to change the ownership, and our licensing division recommends that the board approve this request.
Okay. Any questions about this one? Oh, is there a motion to approve?
I move that the board approve the amendment requested.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Now we are on to our late renewal applications. So this page contains our now complete but late renewal applications. 2 of them also include additional proposed changes, an ownership change and a location change. The proposed location change is for an indoor tier 1 cultivator moving from Willock to Lyndonville. The site inspection was successful there. In terms of folks on this list, there's just one business that was late on their renewal in the past. For the rest of them, it's either their very first renewal or it's their very first late renewal application. And of course, late applications can be accepted or rejected at the board discretion, but our staff does recommend them for approval.
Okay. We've been historically relatively lenient on the first couple late renewals. I know we kind of talked about moving in a different direction on that, but I think these people probably deserve the benefit of the doubt.
Yep. And just to reiterate what we talked about last time was that in January, we'll talk about we'll do a public presentation of what the renewal process is and then talk about how we're going to handle it going forward.
I think that's right. Yep. Okay. So is there a motion to accept and approve these late renewals?
I move that the board exercise its discretion under Rule 1.15.2A to accept the late but complete applications featured in the preceding slide, and further that we approve the issuance and finally that the amendments requested by the 2 identified licenses.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No, it's a lot. Here, this is a request from our staff. Our staff here is requesting a license continuance on behalf of the listed business in order to allow additional time to convert an integrated license into individual stacked licenses. The board has been provided materials related to this proposed change. The licensee has been working actively with staff, and they're very close to completing that transition. The staff does ask that the board extend the integrated license until the next board meeting on December 17th. And of course, once the individual licenses are approved, the expiration date will revert back to the original December 6th date, currently held by the integrated licensee.
Okay. And this is the last integrated license?
It is our last integrated license.
Okay. Any questions about this? No. Is there a motion to approve the continuance?
I move that the board extend VPA's license in full force and effect while the licensee works with the licensing division to convert its integrated license to its constituent parts.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for that one. I think this is our last slide.
Turn the temperature on here.
I have only one slide left, so I know it's on this slide here for you. We have 4 establishments with late renewal submissions that are also seeking extensions on their license renewals because they're currently incomplete. Each application also has a pending amendment associated with it. However, for various reasons, none of the 4 are being recommended by our staff for an extension. The board should have received supplemental materials for each establishment detailing their specific circumstances relevant to the individual cases. I could quickly highlight a few few reasons. For Cambridge Cannabis, one of the bigger issues is their 3rd renewal. It's also their 3rd late renewal. Heligood does not currently have a passing site inspection or a clear way forward to securing one within the next 30 days. And the other 2 businesses have significant deficiencies in their renewal application materials. Again, our staff does not recommend extensions here, but obviously available to discuss any of those in more detail.
Is this a different license for Heligood?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
This is
That's what I thought.
Manufacturing.
So they would still have their cultivation.
Yeah. Yes, you just approved their cultivation.
So this is a renewal for a manufacturing tier 2. Do they have any product that they couldn't move to their manufacturing or to their cultivation facility?
Their manufacturing license has been suspended, and that suspension
Yes.
was just lifted on November 1st, so they have no.
They have no product. Okay. Okay. And they would still have 60 days to attempt to cure?
All of those businesses from the
All of
date
them,
of their expiration of the license.
Okay.
And because the one is a manufacturer and the manufacturing window remains open, they could expire and then reapply as a new applicant if they choose to do so.
Gotcha. And then Cambridge Cannabis, our rationale goes beyond just late renewals.
Yeah, it's just the one.
Yeah,
There's a lot of complex.
Yeah, imaginations going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
And
they
they too would have 60 days,
they would have
right?
60 days to
The
cure.
expiration date is December 12th, and they will have 60 days from that date.
They'd have what until
Yeah, so that's,
January 12th? No, February.
February.
12th.
Okay.
so that's important to understand just for what I was saying. Nothing would end today. If no action were taken, they'll expire on their natural renewal dates. Those vary, but they're right further than today. And then there's a 60-day period in which the license can be redeemed.
Okay. Any other questions? Does anyone need an executive session for any of the details for any of these that are non-public? No?
No.
Okay. Is there a motion? Well, is there a motion to do what we need to do here?
I believe so.
Yeah, I mean, because it's an extension not to accept the.
Yeah. I move that the board find that the 4 listed applications are not timely and sufficient and defer action until an appropriate time.
And I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right, and that is a wrap.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah,
Great
I know.
job licensing. Great job compliance. Great job all around. I know
It's my
these.
son's 21st birthday, just so.
Hey, all right. He can finally try a beer for the first time.
2 whole decades,
Try some cannabis
relatively
for the first
unscathed.
Oh yeah, try some cannabis for the
He
first
could.
time.
He's in New Hampshire though.
You should come to a free state.
Everybody for their comments today.
We have one last thing on the agenda. I'm sorry. We have to adopt our regular board meeting schedule. I'm just gonna Olga, do you have the dates in front of you?
Don't have in front of me, but I think I can.
I can chime in if you want.
Yeah, can you read them off, Patrick?
Yeah.
Just read them all off. I mean, I think in general, we focused on the last Wednesday of the month at 1:00.
Yeah, I was ready. I had the dates because this is what happened 6 months ago when we did this. So,
Okay.
following
So
the
would you
last
mind just
Wednesday
reading
of the
them
month.
off? Yeah. Yeah.
Following the last Wednesday of the month, we have January 28th, February 25th, March 25th, April 29th, May 27th, and June 24th.
All at 1:00. All happen here or virtually.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
So is there a motion to adopt that regular meeting schedule as presented to us?
I move that the board adopt its regular meeting schedule for the next 6 months.
And I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right. Now, thank you all for all of your comments. Thanks for sticking with us through this. And I assume that we'll see a lot of you tomorrow at our peer networking event. Thank you.
Thank you.